Before the video begins, I'm going to do something that I've never done before. My regular viewers know that it's rare I ask for your guys' support. In fact, I occasionally start my videos by telling you guys not to like or subscribe unless the video exceeds your expectations. This video is no different. However, I wanted to make it known that it is also not monetized. To be fully transparent, this is something that I knew would happen going into this project. That in order to fulfill my vision and use the exact music and visuals I wanted to use and when I wanted to use them, I would have to take a risk and trust you guys to help me out directly. All that to say, if you do find that this video exceeds your expectations, I would very much appreciate it if you would help me out by either becoming a channel member or using the super thanks feature in the comments to donate a flat amount. I'll talk a little bit more about the ways you can help at the end of the video, but for now, what I really want is for you to just enjoy the video itself. It was a huge passion project of mine, so I'm equally excited and nervous to see what you guys think. But with that out of the way, let me introduce to you the entirety of the Attack on Titan timeline, a beautiful story about the perils and persistence of humanity. The story of Attack on Titan begins with a young girl named Ymir. One day, Ymir would watch helplessly as her village was raided and pillaged by the tribe known as Eldia. Head of this tribe was King Fritz, a man whose ambition was equal only to his cruelty. Without hesitation, King Fritz laid claim to the village and all of its contents, including Ymir, who, once free, became nothing more than a helpless slave. During her servitude, Ymir would stumble upon a pig pen. Looking inside the pen, she realized that, like her, the animal was trapped, destined to live its life and eventually die in service to its masters. Wishing a better life for it than she had herself, she released the pig from captivity. When King Fritz eventually learned that Ymir was responsible for its escape, he made an example of her by releasing her into the woods, where his men were ordered to hunt her down. As Ymir ran from her inevitable death, she would quickly stumble upon an ancient, towering tree. Seeking sanctity, she walked into the tree's massive opening. As she entered, the uneven terrain caused her to fall uncontrollably until she landed in a body of water. Sinking to the depths, she conceded to what she thought were her last moments. That is, until she came into contact with an anomalous entity, elusive in origin and name, that would grant her its incredible power. In doing so, she became the first ever Titan, and the foundation for all that would follow her. Despite her tremendous power, Ymir would remain a slave of King Fritz, vowing to use her abilities in any way he saw fit. Twisted as it may be, this was the result of her undying love for him, one that she likely hoped he might reciprocate if only she fulfilled his every desire. So began the age of the Eldian Empire, which, like King Fritz himself, would be defined by its limitless ambition and unending cruelty. After years of service to Eldia, King Fritz would reward Ymir for her acts by allowing her to bear his children. With time, she gave birth to a total of 3 daughters, named Maria, Rose, and Sina, all the while continuing to assist Eldia expand its influence and conquer its rivals. While everything seemed to be going well, King Fritz, in his push to expand his empire, had neglected to watch his back. While attending a ceremony in celebration of Eldia's victory against the rival civilization of Marley, King Fritz would watch as a man from the crowd launched a spear at his chest. Without hesitation, Ymir jumped in the path of the spear. Having given everything for King Fritz, including her own life at this point, Ymir decided to give herself peace in death. Having only been 13 years since she was given her Titan abilities, this death would curse all that would eventually inherit her abilities to die after only 13 years. Upon Emir's death, her consciousness ascended to another plane of existence, a realm where, as was her will, the memories and consciousness of all her descendants would converge, in hopes that one day she might find true connection with another person. This domain, known as the Paths, existed beyond the physical world, where space and time were both infinite and instantaneous. Bound to this ethereal plane, Emir, driven by her desire for connection and unwavering love for King Fritz, remained trapped, forever a slave to the will of any founding titan bearing the royal blood of the Fritz lineage. After Emir died, King Fritz, in a desperate attempt to retain her power, forced their 3 daughters, Maria, Rose, and Sina, to eat the remains of their mother. In doing so, her titan power was fragmented amongst her children. Years later, Maria, Rose, and Sina, likely at the command of King Fritz, bore children of their own, giving rise to a new branch of humanity, all of which were connected to each other through Emir in the Paths. Thus, they were dubbed the subjects of Emir, supreme beings in the eyes of Eldians, devils to all else. Though the specifics are unclear, it's likely that nearly 13 years after usurping their mother's power, Maria, Rose, and Sina were observed growing frail due to the curse of Emir. Assuming the worst, the ritual of succession was repeated, once more fragmenting Emir's power into a total of 9 titans. The Colossal Titan, while far from precise, offered its users unprecedented raw physical power, the primary source of which stemmed from its large size as well as its ability to release stored heat either over a long period of time or instantaneously. The female Titan, known for its feminine physique, excelled in adaptability, allowing its users to replicate attributes of the other 9 Titans with relative ease. The Beast Titan allowed its users to take on the physical attributes of almost any animal, giving it varying capabilities depending on the inheritor. The Armored Titan, with its highly durable hardened armor, was well suited as the primary bulwark of the 9, providing cover and defensive capabilities. Opposed to the Armored, the Jaw Titan was purely offensive in nature, with unrivaled speed as well as claws and jaws sharp enough to cut through practically anything. Similar yet distinct to the Jaw was the Cart Titan. Its primary ability stemmed from its heightened endurance, which allowed the user to stay in Titan form for months at a time, as well as shift into a Titan in quick succession hundreds of times over. The Warhammer Titan was able to materialize constructs likely limited only by the imagination and endurance of its user. The Attack Titan served as the catalyst of chaos amidst order, destined to buck the authority of those who sought to control it. To accomplish this goal, the Attack gave its users the unique ability to see the memories of those yet to inherit it. This gave the Attack an extremely influential advantage, rivaled only by the incredible power of the last of the 9 Titans. The Founding Titan, if used to its fullest ability, was the most powerful of the 9, having the ability to wield the power of the founder Emir herself to command, modify, and manipulate every last subject of Emir. Due to this, and the fact that those without royal blood couldn't use these abilities directly, the Founding Titan remained within the control of the Fritz family, while the others were given to 8 subservient Eldian families. Over the next several centuries, the Eldian Empire maintained its supremacy, using the overwhelming power of the Titans to crush any opposition. During this time, countless civilizations and cultures were eradicated, their histories erased and replaced by Eldia's narrative of dominance. Marley in particular struggled immensely during this period, barely holding on in the face of Eldia's might. With their monopoly over the power of the 9 and unmatched military strength, the Eldian Empire reshaped the world in its image, leaving a legacy of bloodshed and fear that ensured its reign remained uncontested. Amid this relentless expansion, the Eldian Empire sought to perfect its hold on power by bridging the gap between Titans and humanity, the ultimate result being the Ackerman clan, a bloodline of humans deliberately engineered to possess abnormal strength, speed, and reflexes activated by their survival instincts. These extraordinary abilities made the Ackermans uniquely suited for both combat and protection. As such, they were designated the sword and shield of the royal family. Tasked with guarding the king and enforcing his decrees, the Ackermans became a vital yet tightly reined force within Eldian society. After nearly 2 millennia of dominance, the Eldian Empire had grown so vast and powerful that they found themselves without enemies. Left unchallenged, though ambitious as ever, its ruling families found that the only ones left to conquer were one another. Thus, they began to look inward, vying for supremacy amongst themselves. Around the year 740, the 145th king of Eldia, Karl Fritz, deeply ashamed of his nation's pathetic state, as well as their long history of conquest and atrocities, devised a plan to bring his nation to its knees. To achieve this, he secretly allied with the influential Tiber family, the owners of the Warhammer Titan, who shared in Fritz's shame. Together, they fabricated the legend of a Marleyan hero named Hellos, who had exacerbated the Eldian infighting, opening an opportunity for the rest of the world to cripple the empire for good. As the legend of Hellos spread and his empire began to collapse, Karl Fritz, knowing he could never atone for the sins of his ancestors, fled Eldia with the remnants of the Fritz royal family, along with some of those belonging to the Ackerman and Asimobido clans, to an isolated piece of Eldian territory known as Paradis Island. This retreat left the Empire's 8 other noble houses to fend for themselves. In the ensuing power vacuum, civil war erupted across the Empire, resulting in widespread devastation and weakening Eldia's control over its territories. With the tale of Hellos widespread, Marley, inspired by their great hero, allied with the Tiber family to launch a large-scale revolution to overthrow their former oppressors. This marked the climactic turning point in what would become known as the Great Titan War. During the Great Titan War, Marley would systematically gain control of 7 of the 9 Titans, including the Colossal, Armored, Beast, Female, Jaw, Cart, and Attack Titans. With each new Titan, they solidified their growing supremacy, allowing them to finally put an end to Eldia's 2,000-year reign. By this point, Marley had miraculously transformed itself from an oppressed nation into the dominant global superpower. Yet, much like Eldia, once Marley got a taste of power, they began implementing the very tactics Eldia imposed on them to keep themselves dominant. To justify this conquest, Marley propagated the tale that Emir Fritz, the first Titan, had attained her powers by making a pact with the so-called Devil of all Earth. According to their narrative, Hellos had vanquished the Devil during the Great Titan War, framing Marley as the saviors of humanity who had not just won a war, they had slain the Devil itself. Meanwhile, on Paradis Island, Karl Fritz used the power of the Founding Titan to summon tens of millions of colossal titans, encasing them in 3 concentric walls named Maria, Rose, and Sina in honor of Emir Fritz's 3 daughters. To protect his people from the horrors of the outside world and to shield them from Eldia's past sins, Karl used the Founder's power to erase the memories of all subjects of Emir within the walls. This created a society ignorant of their true history, living under the illusion that Titans had mysteriously appeared and destroyed most of humanity. Much like the story of Hellos for Marleyans, this fabricated history became the bedrock of their culture, passed down as undisputed truth over the coming generations. However, not all were affected by the memory erasure. The Ackerman and Asimobido clans, resistant and or immune to the Founder's power, retained their memories, which made them targets of relentless persecution for nearly a century. Following Marley's victory over Eldia, Karl Fritz, fearing immediate retaliation, issued a grim warning to the world. If Paradis Island were provoked in any way, the millions of Titans within the walls would be unleashed, flattening the Earth and everyone on it. In reality, Fritz had no intention of releasing the Wall Titans, nor engaging in warfare of any form. He simply wanted to give those within the walls a time of short-lived peace. To ensure this ideology was upheld, Fritz used the Founder's power to bind his successors with a vow renouncing war. This vow ensured that as long as the Founding Titan remained with an Eldian of royal blood, it could not be used to wage war or retaliate in any way. Carl confided this secret to the Tiber family, entrusting them to share the truth if the time ever came to reconcile with the outside world. The threat of this so-called rumbling proved effective, and the Great Titan War came to a definitive end, leaving Marley in control of the larger continent and Eldia confined to Paradis. Though the war was over, Marley's thirst for vengeance remained unsatisfied. Having endured nearly 2,000 years of Eldian domination, they could not simply forgive their former oppressors. However, they could not eliminate subjects of Ymir entirely, as their existence was essential for maintaining the power of the Titans. Faced with this dilemma, Marley enslaved the remaining Eldians, branding them as descendants of the devil itself and burdening them with the collective guilt for Eldia's past atrocities. Within a single generation, Marley had successfully reshaped Eldians into second-class citizens, forced to live in designated internment zones and serve the Marleyan state in however it saw fit, destined to live out their existence in servitude and shame, ensuring they would never again rise to challenge Marley's supremacy. Nearly 13 years after inheriting the power of the founder, Karl Fritz, in an effort to conceal the identity of the true royal bloodline, adopted the surname Rice, and installed a puppet royal family to rule Paradis publicly. This veil allowed the Rice family to operate from the shadows, ensuring the founder's power remained with them in the event of a civil uprising. Afterwards, Karl Fritz, likely just before succumbing to the curse of Ymir, used the founder's abilities to construct a hidden underground chamber designed specifically for the Titan succession ritual. This ritual ensured that the founding Titan, along with Karl's vow-renouncing war, would be passed down through the generations, preserving his perfect vision of peace. Around the year 780, nearly 3 decades after the Great Titan War, a young peasant girl was selected by a group of cultists to serve as the representative of their deity, the founder Ymir. As such, they renamed this young girl Ymir. For years, she lived under this false divinity until they were caught by the authorities. When confronted, Ymir, having fully embraced the lies she had been told, proclaimed that the blood of Ymir Fritz herself flowed through her veins. As punishment for their heresy, she and the cultists were exiled to Paradis, where they were forced to live out their lives as pure Titans. Stripped of her identity and humanity, Ymir was destined to wander the island as a mindless Titan for the next 6 decades. In 817, a young Eldian boy named Grisha Jaeger took his sister Faye beyond the Liberio internment zone to watch an airship take off. In doing so, they were caught by a public security officer named Kruger, who offered the two of them their choice of punishment: hard labor or a quick beating. To shield Faye from being reprimanded for what had ultimately been his actions, Grisha accepted both he and his sister's punishment. While Grisha endured his beating, Kruger's partner, Gross, proclaimed that he would escort Faye home. Instead, he took her to a remote riverbank where she was fed to a pack of dogs. Gross viewed this act with twisted curiosity, because to him, Eldians were little more than vermin, who, if given the chance, would do the exact same thing to him, if not worse. The next morning, Faye's mutilated body was discovered along the riverbank. Public security launched an investigation into the matter, however, this was nothing more than a token gesture given her Eldian heritage. Afterwards, Gross himself delivered the inconclusive results to the Jaegers, claiming she must have gotten lost on her way home. Though Grisha couldn't prove it, he knew in his heart that this was yet another lie fed to them by Marley. Throughout the next 7 years, Grisha, following in his father's footsteps, would practice medicine. Once he became a practicing doctor, Grisha would be sought out by Grice, a member of the Eldian Restorationists. As soon as they met, Grice confirmed Grisha's long-held suspicion: Faye's death had been no accident, but a calculated act of cruelty by Gross. Fueled by anger and a newfound purpose, Grisha joined the Restorationists, vowing to liberate his people as a true patriot of Eldia. Over the coming months, the Eldian Restorationists uncovered documents they believed vindicated Eldia's past as a prosperous nation opposed to a tyrannical empire. That same night, the group's anonymous informant, the Owl, introduced them to Dinah Fritz, the last remaining descendant of Eldian royalty within Marley. Wasting no time, Dinah informed them of a few vital truths. including the location of the founding Titan and Karl Fritz's vow-renouncing war. Using this knowledge, the Restorationists hatched a plan to reclaim the founding Titan and restore Eldia to power. Amid their shared struggle and cooperation, Grisha and Dinah fell in love. A year later, they welcomed their son Zeke, who they saw as the embodiment of Eldia's future. Around the same time, a young boy named Ervin Smith began questioning the history he was taught in his school. When he shared his doubts with his teacher, who was also his father, he was met with evasive answers. However, when they went home, Ervin's father revealed the truth, that the government-issued history books they were given were full of contradictions and unsolved mysteries. This in turn led him to conclude that the history they were taught was being purposefully obscured. He concluded their lecture with a theory, one that he had no way of proving, but that all the evidence pointed towards, that the first king of the walls, Karl Rice, somehow altered the memories of those inside the walls. Fascinated, Ervin shared this revelation to his fellow classmates, most of whom dismissed him entirely. Soon enough, the theory attracted the attention of the First Interior Police, who quickly learned that Ervin's father was the source of his information. Later that night, Ervin's father was found dead, killed by a freak accident, or so Ervin was told. Though Ervin couldn't prove it, he knew that the government killed his father, which proved to him more than anything else that he was on the verge of uncovering the truth. To honor his father and satiate his own curiosity, Ervin would dedicate his life to learning the truth and proving his father correct. A few years later, Kenny Ackerman, a notorious criminal from the underground, was given a tip that the Rice family was the true royal family, and therefore responsible for the persecution of the Ackermans. Fueled by rage, Kenny tracked down and attempted to assassinate Uri Rice, but his plan fell apart when Uri transformed into the founding Titan. To Kenny's astonishment, Uri, compelled by the empathetic will of Karl Fritz, apologized for the suffering inflicted upon the Ackermans and released Kenny unharmed. Stunned by this act of grace, Kenny pledged loyalty to the Rice family, earning a place in the elite ranks of the 1st Interior Squad and, at least in part, restoring the Ackermans' position as the protector of the king. It was likely around the same time that Kenny's sister, Kuhel, began working in a brothel in the underground. It was through this work that she became pregnant and eventually gave birth to a boy who was named Levi. Years later, Kenny used his position within the interior to track down his long-lost sister, only to discover that she had already passed away. Though he had never known Levi, Kenny decided to take the malnourished boy in, teaching him survival skills in the harsh conditions of the underground. Under Kenny's tutelage, Levi, despite his stunted growth, became a formidable fighter. Yet, when Kenny realized that Levi no longer needed a mentor but a father, he chose to walk away, believing himself incapable of fulfilling that role. Around the time Kenny joined the 1st Interior Squad, Marley, wary of becoming obsolete in the face of technological and military advancements, began preparing for the Paradis Island operation. This mission aimed to deploy a select few of the 9 Titans to infiltrate Paradis, seize the founding Titan, and exploit the island's untapped resources. Success, however, hinged on recruiting the most skilled and capable warriors. To achieve this, Marley established the Warrior Program, a rigorous regimen to train subjects of Ymir from a young age to inherit the power of the Titans. When the Owl informed Grisha of this development, the Restorationists' hope of securing the founding Titan grew even dimmer, as they now had to compete against Marley's vast resources. Desperate, Grisha and Dinah saw only one path forward. They pressured their son, Zeke, to join the Warrior Program. But simply joining wasn't enough. For Eldia's future to survive, Zeke had to excel. He had to be faster, stronger, and more capable than any of his peers. So it's no surprise that a burden as heavy as the future of an entire nation would crush someone as young and unprepared as Zeke. During his warrior training, Zeke, weighed down by the expectations placed upon him by both Marley and his parents, grew increasingly disillusioned with the purpose behind his efforts. It wasn't until he met with Tom Sava, the inheritor of the Beast Titan, that he found both relief and purpose. Unlike others who sought to manipulate or mold him to serve their agendas, Sava took genuine interest in Zeke himself. seeking to understand the boy behind the warrior facade. Over the following weeks, Zeke began meeting with Sava regularly, bonding over games of catch and deep conversations. Sava, who was not built for the battlefield himself, confided in Zeke that his true passion lay in uncovering the mysteries of the Titans, their origins, their powers, and the hidden potential of their abilities. For the first time in his life, Zeke had finally considered a future beyond living solely for others' expectations, that he could find his own path forward. Following this revelation, Zeke overheard a group of Marleyan officers discussing their progress hunting down the Eldian restorationists. Terrified for his parents' safety, Zeke pleaded for his parents to abandon their mission, scared that if they continued, they would all be sent to Paradis. Grisha, enraged, berated Zeke for failing to understand the importance of their cause and the sacrifices required to achieve it. Seeking guidance, Zeke turned to the one person he trusted to look after him. Calmly, Zava advised Zeke that if his parents' arrest was inevitable, the least he could do was save himself by turning them in. With a heavy heart, Zeke reported his parents and the other restorationists to the Marleyan authorities. They were then subsequently convicted of treason, possession of foreign Eldian texts, and conspiracy to overthrow the Marleyan government. Like most subjects of Ymir, their punishment was exile to Paradis, where they were to live out the rest of their lives as mindless titans. On Paradis, Grisha discovered his executioners were none other than Kruger and Gross, the same men who had caught him and his sister outside Liberio 15 years prior. After forcing the Eldian restorationists to transform into mindless titans, they brought Dinah forward to suffer the same grim fate, turning her into what would become known as the Smiling Titan. As Grisha watched in despair as his wife was practically killed in front of him, Gross turned his sadistic attention toward him, taunting and toying with him before his execution. However, before Gross could act, Kruger intervened, shoving Gross to his death. Finally revealing himself as the Owl, Kruger transformed into the Attack Titan, unleashing its immense power to annihilate the Marleyan officers and free Grisha. When he emerged from his Titan form, Kruger revealed that his full name was Aaron Kruger, and that he had shaped Grisha's life from a young age for one pivotal purpose: to inherit the Attack Titan and use it to secure the Founding Titan from Paradis. This, Kruger insisted, was the only way to end Paradis' ignorance and restore Eldia to its former glory. With no choice but to accept the immense responsibility thrust upon him, Grisha allowed Kruger to inject him with the Titan Serum. As a pure Titan, Grisha devoured Kruger, usurping the power and responsibility of the Attack Titan. Though his memories were hazy, Grisha managed to wander to the edge of Balmaria near the Shiganshina district. There, he was discovered by a scout named Keith Shadis, who, unaware of Grisha's true identity or origin, took him under his wing. Over time, Keith introduced Grisha to life inside the walls, allowing him to live his life as an ordinary man, while Grisha's memories gradually returned to him. When they did, he followed Kruger's advice and once more began practicing medicine. As he did so, an epidemic swept across Shiganshina. Using his comparatively advanced medical knowledge, Grisha practically single-handedly cured the district. It was during this time that he met Carla, a compassionate and resilient woman who Grisha fell deeply in love with. Following Kruger's guidance once more, Grisha embraced his new life, leading him to eventually marry Carla and start a family. About a year later, Grisha and Carla brought a son into the world. Seeing this child as the symbol of his new beginning, Grisha named him after the man who gave him this second chance. Though he dedicated himself to being a partner and father, Grisha never stopped searching for the Founding Titan, forging relationships with high-ranking officials to uncover its location. About a year or two after Aaron was born, Grisha would find the Rice family chapel. Instead of immediately securing the founder, however, Grisha decided that he would not repeat the mistakes he had made in the past, that he would put his family before his mission, and wait until the absolute last moment before he would do what was necessary. About half a decade later, in 842, Uri Rice, close to succumbing to the curse of Ymir, would look to pass the power of the founder to another in his family. Given that his brother, Rod Rice, was unwilling to take the power, the Founding Titan was passed to Rod's daughter, Frida Rice. By this point, the Warrior program had narrowed its search to 7 primary candidates. These candidates were Zeke Yeager, Rhina Brown, Bertolt Huva, Annie Leonhardt, Marcel Galliard, his younger brother Porco, and Peak Finga. Of these 7 candidates, only 6 would be chosen to inherit a Titan. In doing so, they would be given the status of honorary Marleyan. This fact in particular was of note to young Rhyna, whose Marleyan father was absent in his life. Though irrational, he felt that if he could become a Marleyan in status, his father would finally want to join his family. With that, he held himself to the highest standard, hoping that it would give him the strength necessary to become a true warrior. While playing a game of catch, Sava confided in Zeke that the Founding Titan possessed the ability to alter the biology of subjects of Ymir. Inspired by this revelation, Zeke devised a plan to use the Founder's power to render all Eldians incapable of bearing children, believing this so-called euthanization plan would bring a peaceful end to the cycle of suffering that they and their ancestors had inflicted upon the world. Sava, wary of the endless bloodshed wrought by their people, saw Zeke's proposal as a noble solution to an otherwise intractable problem. With renewed purpose, Zeke devoted himself to inheriting Sava's Beast Titan, determined to carry out their shared vision. As Sava approached the end of his term as the Beast Titan, he entrusted Zeke with his power. Zeke, in turn, vowed to honor his mentor's legacy by dedicating his life to ending millennia of needless war. Around this same time, a young boy named Armin Arler read a book that detailed the environment of the outside world. Fascinated by its contents, he showed it to his best friend Aaron. Out of everything in the book, one thing stood out to the both of them, something called the sea. From what the book said, it seemed to be a body of salt water that spanned as far as the eye could see. Upon learning this, Aaron and Armin would make a pact. No matter how dangerous it was or how long it would take, one day they would reach the sea together. From the moment they made the pact, Aaron's world was forever changed. From then on, he would feel the need to escape the confines of the walls, to take back the freedom that he felt had been stolen from them. Soon afterward, Armin's parents attempted to leave the bounds of the walls using a hot air balloon. In the midst of their great escape, they were killed by the 1st Interior Squad, who staged their deaths to look like an accident. With his parents gone, Armin was taken in by his grandfather. During this same period, a young girl named Historia, the illegitimate child of Rod Rice, was secluded to a farm alongside her mother Alma. Hoping to avoid her responsibilities, Alma would distance herself from her daughter, which would have destined Historia to a life of inadequacy and struggle, if not for Frida, Historia's half-sister. Despite her responsibilities as the true queen, Frida would regularly find time to visit Historia, giving her the life she deserved. Yet, every time she left, Historia's memories of Frida would be wiped from her mind using the Founder's abilities. When Frida would inevitably return, the memories of her sister would be restored, allowing her to gradually grow into the caring and intelligent girl Frida knew Historia could become. With the Paradis Island operations soon to commence, Marley began their final crucial rounds of warrior training. Rhyna, aware that he was lagging behind, worked even harder than before, all towards the goal of rebuilding his family. Meanwhile, Annie Leonhardt, his fellow warrior candidate, would train at the behest of her adopted father, becoming highly proficient in the martial arts of his homeland. Like many of the warrior candidate's parents, he did this not for her own protection, but because he saw her as his ticket to a better life. After years of rigorous training, Bertolt Huva, Annie Leonhardt, Marcel Galliard, Peak Finga, and Rhyna Brown were selected as Marley's elite warriors. Marcel's quick thinking earned him the Jaw Titan. Peak's endurance made her a natural fit for the cart. Annie's sharp adaptability secured her the female. Bertolt, tame enough to handle such unwieldy power, was chosen as the Colossal, and Rhyna's seemingly unwavering resolve won him the armor. The following year, a woman from the underground named Isabel Magnolia, in an act of compassion, attempted to escape the underground to free a trapped bird. Pursued by the authorities, she eventually stumbled upon Levi and his friend Furlon Church, who shielded her from capture and welcomed her into their group. Over time, Levi and Furlon taught Isabel to wield one of their stolen sets of ODM gear, turning her into a skilled and dependable ally. Eventually, the group attracted the attention of Counselor Nicholas Lovoff, who approached them with an opportunity. In exchange for a life on the surface, he asked for their hand in stealing a document from Ervin Smith that Lovoff knew could incriminate him for his corrupt dealings with the military police. When the job was complete, they were ordered to assassinate Ervin in any way they saw fit. After revealing the proposal, Lovov warned that the scouts were already closing in on them. Using this as an opportunity, he suggested they demonstrate their skills to the scouts, knowing that Ervin would likely try to recruit them. Not long after, Ervin led a group of scouts into the underground, apprehending Levi, Furlan, and Isabel. Recognizing their exceptional ODM skills, Ervin offered them a place in the scout regiment. Semi-reluctantly, the trio agreed, and began training with the scouts. While the recruits trained, Ervin finalized his revolutionary scouting formation, designed to evade Titans rather than confront them directly during expeditions beyond Wall Maria. Putting this to the test, the formation was to be used during the 23rd Recon mission, which Levi, Furlan, and Isabel would partake in. During the expedition, a storm threw the formation into chaos, leading to the tragic deaths of Furlan and Isabel. When the storm cleared, Levi, devastated by the loss of his friends, confronted Ervin, revealing his original mission to kill him. Ervin, who had suspected this all along, once again offered Levi a choice: fulfill his contract and kill him, or honor the sacrifices of Furlan and Isabel by continuing to fight with the scouts and eradicate the Titan threat. Struck by Ervin's nobility and vision, Levi vowed to dedicate his heart to Ervin's cause. That same year, while awaiting the arrival of their doctor, Grisha Jaeger, the Ackerman household was invaded by a trio of criminals. Their plan was to abduct the young girl Mikasa and her mother due to their Eastern heritage as direct descendants of the Azumabito clan. When Mikasa's mother fought fiercely to protect her daughter, she was killed in the struggle. Mikasa, left as the only survivor, was then taken to a secluded cabin. Soon after, Grisha and Eren discovered the aftermath of the home invasion. While Grisha rushed to get help, Eren, filled with anger and determination, decided to search for Mikasa on his own. Tracking her to a nearby cabin, he managed to ambush and stab two of the criminals to death before being overpowered by the third. Desperate for help, Eren called out to Mikasa, urging her to fight for her life. In that critical moment, Mikasa's latent Ackerman instincts awakened, granting her the incredible strength needed to kill the last attacker and save them both. Later that day, Grisha found the two of them outside the cabin. Though grateful for their safety, Grisha scolded Eren for his reckless behavior. Afterwards, Eren, wanting to comfort his new friend, gave Mikasa his scarf, which she vowed to keep with her at all times. Grisha, realizing Mikasa had no home to return to, decided to take her in, welcoming her to join their family in the heart of the Shiganshina district. In 845, shortly before the Paradis Island operation officially commenced, Annie's father would confess to her that in their years training together, he had grown to see her as a true daughter, apologizing for his cruel actions and asking her to promise she would return. This moment forever changed Annie, giving her a reason to return to Marley after their mission was accomplished. Afterwards, the Marleyan military celebrated their benchmark success by parading the warriors through the street. It was during this celebration that Reina spotted his father. As an honorary Marleyan, he attempted to earn his father's attention, only to be rejected despite his accomplishments. Soon after, Reina, Annie, Bertolt, and Marcel were shipped off to Paradis. As their ship left port, Reina, wounds of rejection still fresh, reasoned that if becoming a warrior wasn't enough, he would have to go one step further. He would go to Paradis and do what he was chosen to do: cleanse the island of devils. Just days after arriving on Paradis and the day before they were to attack Wall Maria, the warriors began discussing the repercussions for what they were planning to do. Marcel, unclear of what the future held for them, revealed to Reina that the only reason he was chosen over Porco was because he had recommended Reina to save his brother. This revelation shattered Reina's world, wiping away what little confidence he had left. The next morning, as the warriors prepared to leave their camp, Ymir, who had been on Paradis for 6 decades at this point, emerged from the ground and ate Marcel. In doing so, she inherited the power of the Jaw Titan, turning her back to normal. When the other warriors reached safety, Annie and Bertolt decided that with their leader, Marcel, gone, the best course of action was to go back to Marley. Rhina, knowing that his armor would be stripped from him if he returned, reasoned that they couldn't go back empty-handed or they would all be seen as failures, stripping them of their titans and their families of what little comfort they had earned them. Still thinking their best course of action was retreat, Annie attempted to leave. Just then, Rhina grabbed her, stating that if they were going to abandon the mission because they didn't have Marcel, then he was going to fill Marcel's shoes. He would once more push himself further than ever before to become the leader they needed. Assuming this position immediately, his first order was to continue the mission and breach Wall Maria. Meanwhile, the Scout Regiment conducted yet another recon mission. When the mission went sideways, as was unfortunately common, the scouts were forced to retreat back to Wall Maria. During the same time, Eren and Mikasa were tasked with collecting firewood around Shiganshina. As they did so, Eren would take a nap at the tree he, Mikasa, and Armin would frequent. While in this innocent nap, Eren was implanted with visions of what was to come by his future self. When he awoke, however, the memories instantly slipped away, becoming nothing more than a hazy, forgotten dream. When the scouts returned from their expedition, Eren, driven to become a scout himself, rushed to witness their arrival. Despite the overwhelming show of devastation, Eren remained determined to become a scout in order to free them from the solitude of the walls. In contrast, this devastating loss was the final straw for Commander Keith Shadis, who solemnly elected to step down from his position, allowing Erwin to take his place as the 13th commander of the Scout Regiment. When Eren and Mikasa returned home, Mikasa revealed Eren's desire to join the scouts to his mother. Both Grisha and Carla were opposed to this, yet Grisha, on his way to secure the Founding Titan, and aware of what was about to happen thanks to the memories given to him by future Eren via the Attack Titan's powers, assured Carla that she need not worry. He then showed Eren the key to the cellar, noting that when he got back, he would show him what he was working on. While Grisha left to secure the Founder, Eren and Mikasa rescued Armin from a group of bullies. Meanwhile, on the other side of Wall Maria, Bertolt, following through with Rhina's plan, transformed into the Colossal Titan. After breaching Wall Maria, Bertolt would leave his Titan form, only to be confronted by the Smiling Titan. Frozen by fear, Bertolt accepted his fate. Unbeknownst to him, future Eren, wielding the power of the Founding Titan, would use his power to command the Smiling Titan, his half-mother, away from Bertolt and toward his own mother, kickstarting the very events that had shaped him into the monster he was. Amidst the chaos, Armin would travel to safety, while Eren and Mikasa went home where they found Carla trapped in rubble. Willing to sacrifice herself to save her children, she pleaded for them to leave her behind. Unable to save her, Hannes, a family friend and a soldier of the garrison, grabbed the kids and ran to safety, leaving Carla to be eaten by the Smiling Titan. While Eren and Mikasa were transported to safety, Rhina would use the power of the Armored Titan to break through the interior of Wall Maria, exposing millions more to the threat of the Titans in an effort to flush out the Founder. In response to this, the central government declared the outlier districts of Wall Maria a lost cause, and ordered a full retreat to Wall Rose. Later that day, Grisha confronted the royal family beneath the Rice family chapel. In this confrontation, he begged Frieda to use her power to stop the attack on Wall Maria. However, Grisha knew that this was a meaningless attempt at resolution, for he had seen glimpses of Eren's memories of the future, a future that called upon him to end the Rice family in order to save Eldia. But as Grisha raised his scalpel to fulfill his ultimate duty, he found he could not bring himself, a reformed man of peace, to murder innocent children in the name of salvation. As Grisha cowered in fear, he suddenly felt the presence of a man who resembled his son. But this was not the innocent child he had raised. He was the avatar of his sins, a monster who called upon him to carry out his will, to kill all but Rod Rice and secure the power of the Founding Titan. Eren's will surging through his veins, Grisha plunged the scalpel into his hand. transforming into the Attack Titan. Using this power, he ate Frida Rice, finally stripping the former Fritz family of the founding Titan after 150 generations. When Grisha, devastated by his actions, stumbled his way out of the chapel, he once again felt the presence of his son, but this time, it was not Eren. After Eren arrived in Trost, Grisha, driven by Eren's memories of the future, took his son into the woods, where he injected him with Titan serum. As a pure Titan, Eren ate his own father, unknowingly securing the powers of both the Attack and Founding Titans. In the wake of this, Shadis found Eren's unconscious body and returned him to Trost. The next day, Eren, completely unaware of recent events, woke up inside a refugee camp in Trost with the cellar key hanging around his neck. A few days later, most of the refugees from Walmaria were forced to plow fields in an unsuccessful attempt to grow more food for the starving population. Around the same time, Historia's mother was killed by the 1st Interior Squad. After her death, Rod Rice proposed that they change Historia's name to Krista Lenz and ship her off to the Cadet Corps. The following year, with the famine worse than ever, the central government had no choice but to send refugees of age to retake Walmaria, knowing full well that they would all die. 20% of the total survivors, or about 250,000 refugees, including Armin's grandfather, were sent. By the end of the culling, only about 200 people survived. Yet the central government considered the mission a success as it lessened the strain on the scarce food supply. In the wake of this devastating loss, Eren decided to join the Cadet Corps in an effort to eventually become a scout. With no other options, Armin and Mikasa decided to join him. Similarly, the warriors decided that the best way to infiltrate the government and find the founder was to join the upcoming Cadet Corps training. Meanwhile, Ymir would overhear that Rod Rice had a bastard child named Krista Lenz, who was shipped off to become a cadet. Seeing herself in Krista, Ymir made it her goal to keep her safe. The following year, in 847, Eren, Mikasa, Armin, Reina, Bertolt, Annie, Jean, Ymir, Krista, Connie, Sasha, Marco, Flock, and many others officially enlisted into the Cadet Corps. Their training began with Shadis breaking the cadets down so they could be molded into effective soldiers. Afterwards, they began ODM training with simple balance drills. Shadis, wanting to protect Carla's only son, purposefully broke Eren's training belt, hoping to save him from himself. Despite the intervention, Eren managed to overcome the faulty gear, proving to Shadis that he was more than capable of handling himself. The following year, while partaking in the Wasteland excursion training, the 104th Cadet Corps were held at gunpoint by a group of criminals. While captive, they watched as the criminals kidnapped Krista and took their ODM gear. With no easy way to save Krista or reclaim their gear, the cadets were forced to either go after the criminals themselves or find help and risk the criminals getting away. They soon chose the former, trusting in each other and their own abilities. Their plan eventually worked, resulting in them reclaiming their gear and saving Krista. During his time living and fighting alongside the devils he had sworn to destroy, Reina found that the only way to endure the weight of his actions was to think of himself as two separate people. While this was similar to the incident with Marcel, it was different in the sense that he couldn't fully discard his old self. If he did, it meant he would have to abandon his mission, which meant he would never be able to return home. His subconscious solution: bury his old life. Compartmentalize his identity into the warrior of Marley and the soldier of Paradis. By hiding one part of himself away, he could once more continue to do what needed to be done, unaware that for every action he took from that moment on, his mind would grow increasingly unstable, inevitably resulting in its eventual collapse. While training with the 104th, Daz, Krista, and Ymir became stranded on a mountain. To save Krista from sacrificing herself to help Daz, Ymir pushed Krista to the ground before transforming into the Jaw Titan to deliver Daz to safety. Without Daz weighing her down, Krista was able to make it back to the cadets' camp, where she confronted Ymir about how such a feat was even possible. Unable to reveal her Titan abilities without explaining everything surrounding it, Ymir simply told Krista that when the time came to show her the truth, Krista would return the favor by sharing her true name. The next year, during the return of the 34th Recon mission, the scouts were attacked by a horde of Titans, forcing a young scout named Ilse Longnar to abandon her gear and retreat into the wilderness. Equipped with nothing but a notebook, Ilse logged her journey back to safety. Days later, while traveling through a meadow, Ilse was cornered by a Titan who mistook her for Ymir. Mustering what little they retained from their previous life, the Titan spoke, muttering words like subject of Ymir and Lady Ymir. More confused than ever, Ilse tried to communicate with the Titan, only to be met with frustrating silence. Overwhelmed, the Titan began clawing at their face, prompting Ilse to run away in fear. Instincts kicking in, the Titan chased after her, biting her head off before placing her remains into the tree that centered the meadow. 1 year after the event, during the 49th Recon mission, squad leader Hanji Zoe would stumble upon Ilse's body while trying to capture a Titan. After reading through Ilse's journal, Hanji became even more curious about the Titans, requesting to Erwin that the scouts focus at least some of their resources to capturing a Titan. Erwin ultimately accepted this proposal, prompting Hanji to develop a new method of capturing Titans, which allowed her to study them more than ever before. While training with the 104th, Reina, Annie, and Bertolt continued to do all they could to find the identity of the founding Titan. With each of them growing increasingly exhausted after repeatedly hitting dead ends, Reina decided that the best course of action was to repeat what they did 5 years prior and breach Wall Rose, reasoning that, if successful, they would finally smoke out the founder. If unsuccessful, they would at least manage to kill more devils and drive the island further into desperation. After 3 long years of training, the cadets in the 104th training class finally graduated, the top 10 trainees by score being Krista Lenz, Sasha Brous, Connie Springa, Marco Bott, Jean Kirstein, Aaron Yeager, Annie Lanhart, Reina Brown, and top of her class, Mikasa Ackerman. Following the graduation, while the other cadets were cleaning the cannons atop Wall Rose, Bertolt would follow through with their plan to breach the wall. As dozens of Titans flooded into Trost, Bertolt would shroud himself in steam, seemingly vanishing just as quickly as he had appeared. As the chaos was unfolding, Garrison Commander Pixis was given news about the situation in Trost. Awaiting Pixis' arrival, the garrison and cadets were arranged into 3 teams, with the rookies on the front lines, while the elite soldiers, including Mikasa, were stationed furthest from the action. Eren, ready to avenge his mother, immediately rushed to kill as many Titans as he could, resulting in his leg being unceremoniously chopped off by a Titan. Armin, frozen at the sight of this, was then easily picked up and placed into the mouth of a Titan. Just before he could be eaten, however, Eren jumped into the Titan's mouth, sacrificing himself to save his best friend. Meanwhile, on the other side of Trost, Mikasa saved a group of refugees from being eaten by a Titan. Included in these refugees was a man named Demo Reeves, the head of the influential Reeves Company, as well as a young girl named Louise, who, inspired by Mikasa's bravery, would go on to become a scout herself. Simultaneously, in the stomach of the Titan, Eren instinctively triggered his dormant Titan power. Driven by his vengeance, he began attacking any Titan he came across, saving Mikasa in the process. After killing dozens of Titans, Eren, exhausted in battle, emerged from his Titan's body. When Eren eventually regained consciousness, he, Mikasa, and Armin were backed into a corner surrounded by the garrison. Confused about his abilities, Captain Vorman questioned Eren's allegiance to humanity. Unconvinced by their pleas, he ordered the garrison to execute Eren. To save his friends, Eren once again instinctively used his power, proving without a doubt to everyone that he was somehow both human and Titan. While the garrison reloaded their cannons, Armin convinced Commander Pixis, who had recently arrived, that Eren could be a valuable asset to the military. Agreeing with Armin, Pixis proposed Eren use his abilities to seal the hole in Wall Rose using a massive boulder. With the entire garrison now at his back, Eren shifted into a Titan. As was common with the first few transformations, Eren's subconscious took control of his movements, attacking any and everything in sight. Unsure as to why this was the case, the garrison quickly subdued Aaron. When Armin eventually arrived, he attempted to inspire his best friend to finish what they had started, so that one day they might finally reach the sea. When Aaron finally gained control over his own movements, he hoisted the boulder and sealed the hole in Wall Rose. Witnessing this very act, Rhina and Bertolt accidentally revealed their identities to Marco. To keep him from getting away, they stole his ODM gear and left him to be eaten by a Titan. After Wall Rose was sealed, Aaron was imprisoned for both his and the public's safety. Meanwhile, the scouts and garrison joined forces to kill the remaining Titans in Trost. The only exceptions being 2 Titans that Hanji would later name Sani and Bean, which she would use to study Titan physiology. After Trost was cleaned up, Erwin and Levi visited Aaron to question his origins and intentions, judging whether or not they would allow him to join their ranks if everything went Erwin's way. Afterward, Aaron was summoned before a tribunal to decide whether or not his abilities were of service to or detrimental to the people within the walls. In the end, Levi agreed to take responsibility for Aaron's actions, stating that if he ever fell out of line, he would kill Aaron himself. Premier Dallas Zachary, the head of the military itself, agreed to this proposal, formally assigning Aaron to the Scout Regiment. Days later, Aaron joined Levi's Special Operations Squad at the former Scout headquarters to study his Titan abilities in seclusion. Meanwhile, Erwin made preparations for the upcoming 57th Recon mission. While publicly the mission's goal was that of a simple test to see if they could reach Grisha's cellar the following year, Erwin secretly planned to use it to flesh out any other so-called intelligent Titans. That same night, while Hanji was lecturing Aaron, Annie, using Marco's ODM gear, killed Sani and Bean. While the scouts launched a full investigation into the matter, no clear culprits were found. Later that day, the top 10 cadets of the 104th, excluding Aaron, were given the opportunity to choose their preferred military regiments. Annie opted for the military police, while the rest, swayed by Aaron's resolve, chose to join the scouts. While the timing is unclear, it's likely that around this same time, Marley, unaware of the status of their warriors, deployed the Beast and Cart Titans to Paradis to check on their progress. Meanwhile, in Stohez, Annie, in preparation for the 57th Recon mission, asked her fellow MP, Hitch, to cover her next day's patrol, offering to cover one of her missing person cases in return. Hitch ultimately accepted, handing her the case file for a woman named Carly Stratman. Seeking leads, Annie spoke with Carly's father, learning nothing of immediate value. After tracking down multiple leads, Annie was directed to Carly's boyfriend's apartment, where she found illegal drugs and his lifeless body. Unable to report the crime without jeopardizing her plans, Annie planned to find Carly before nightfall. Eventually, Annie confronted Carly at her apartment, learning that she had manufactured the drugs herself to support her father's business. Respecting her resourcefulness and buying her silence, Annie gave Carly a permit to enter Wall Rose, where she would start a new life. Afterwards, Annie confronted Carly's father about Carly's boyfriend's murder, confirming her suspicion that he was responsible for it. However, instead of turning him in, Annie decided to aid him in disposing of the body as to not leave any loose ends. The following day, the scouts began the 57th Recon mission. As was part of Erwin's plan, they spread misinformation about Aaron's position, as well as brought weapons to catch an intelligent Titan. Tailing the formation, Annie eventually shifted into the female Titan. Armin, Rhina, and Jean were among the first to spot her in the formation's right flank. While chasing after her, Armin told Rhina that Aaron was likely in the center rank, the safest spot of the formation. When they finally caught up to the female Titan, Rhina purposefully got himself caught by Annie, directing her to Aaron's position. When Erwin's suspicions of an intelligent Titan were confirmed, he guided the formation into a dense forest, providing them cover for their ambush as well as verticality for their ODM gear. When the female Titan eventually caught up to Levi's squad, where Aaron had been positioned, they used a volley of harpoons to subdue her. As Aaron and the Levi squad continued forward, Erwin and Levi himself stayed back to capture the female Titan. After multiple failed attempts at revealing her identity, Annie, left with no other options, called for the surrounding Pure Titans to converge on her location. When they arrived, they tore through her Titan body, allowing her to escape and equip herself with ODM gear. Using this, Annie caught up to and killed the Levi squad. Eren, left alone and vengeful as ever, shifted into the Attack Titan to stop Annie. Hearing this, Mikasa and Levi made their way toward Eren. When Annie eventually bested Eren, she stowed him in her mouth before making her escape. With both Mikasa and Levi's combined skills, they managed to cripple the female Titan and rescue Eren. Given all of this information, Armin, who had found the female Titan's actions familiar since she first appeared, concluded that its true identity was likely Annie. Hours later, the remaining scouts returned to Wall Rose, where the central government revoked the scouts' custody of Eren. Having to act fast, Erwin devised a plan to confirm Armin's suspicions about Annie. This plan involved tricking Annie into thinking she was keeping Eren from being executed, but in reality, they planned to lure her underground, where if she was the female Titan, she couldn't transform. Meanwhile, in Ragako village, Zeke used a gas derived from his spinal fluid to turn the entire village into Titans. Minutes later, a collection of scouts, including Reina, Bertolt, Sasha, Connie, Jean, Emir, and Krista, witnessed as the Titans from Ragako village stormed their outpost. Assuming Wall Rose had been breached, Connie traveled to his home village of Ragako, while Sasha went to check on her hometown of Dopper. Soon after, Armin confronted Annie with the possibility that the government might kill Eren, prompting her to help Armin and Mikasa smuggle Eren to safety. However, they quickly hit a dead end when Annie refused to go underground, confirming their suspicions that she was the female Titan. With nothing left to hide, Annie unleashed her power. As Annie rampaged through Stohez, Eren found himself trapped beneath rubble, his mind refusing to accept the reality of the betrayal. As her rampage continued, Eren concluded that he had sworn an oath to himself that he would kill every last Titan, and that, friend or not, Annie was no different. As Eren chased Annie throughout Stohez, Erwin was arrested by the military police for his hand in the ensuing chaos. As Annie made her way toward the wall, she managed to overwhelm Eren before he went berserk. In this state, Eren relentlessly pursued Annie even as she began climbing the wall. Helping Eren, Mikasa cut off Annie's fingers, sending her plummeting to the ground. Still enraged, Eren attempted to eat Annie, forcing her to create a crystal shell to keep her from being consumed. As she did so, their Titan bodies began to fuse together, prompting Levi to pull Eren from his Titan. When the attack on Stohez concluded, Erwin made his case to the central government for the scout regiment to keep custody of Eren. He argued that while the battle devastated the district, the alternate outcome of yet another breach in the wall could have been beyond devastating. While it was far from unanimous, the central government ultimately agreed with Erwin's proposal, allowing the scouts to continue to study and use Eren for the betterment of humanity. By the following morning, Hanji, as well as some of the scouts and the MPs, discovered that in her escape, Annie had broken a piece of the wall, revealing one of the Wall Titans. Confused about its origin and purpose, Hanji attempted to interrogate Pastor Nick, a pastor for the Church of the Walls. Learning nothing, she kept him at her side while she tested some theories of her own by comparing a piece of the female Titan's hardening with the wall itself. Soon enough, she came to understand that this entire time, the very thing that shielded them from annihilation at the hands of the Titans were themselves made of Titans. When Sasha eventually arrived in Dopper, she found a single survivor, a young girl named Kaya who, paralyzed by fear, had watched as her mother was eaten by a Titan. Sasha grabbed the girl, running as far as she could until she had to face the Titan herself. Using only a bow, she shot out both of its eyes, allowing the both of them to slip away undetected. Simultaneously, Connie found Ragako in ruins due to the mass transformation. Holding out hope, he traveled to his childhood home, where he found it had been destroyed by an immobile Titan. As he rationalized how such a thing could even happen, he couldn't shake the thought that the Titan somehow resembled his own mother. Just then, Reina stole his attention, suggesting they carry on with the rest of their group and search Wall Rose for signs of damage. After scouring the entirety of the southwest section of Wall Rose, the scouts concluded that despite the Titan's sudden appearance, there was no breach in Wall Rose. Meanwhile, Eren, Mikasa, Armin, Levi, and Hanji discussed their theories about the Wall Titan in the presence of Pastor Nick. Hanji, drawing from her experiments with the female Titan's hardening, stated her belief that the walls were somehow made of Titans that were encased in a hardened material. Seeing as they would likely uncover the truth regardless, Pastor Nick eventually revealed to them that while he was sworn to secrecy, Krista indirectly held the answers they were looking for. Later that same night, Hanji's background report for Annie was finally fulfilled, revealing that she had reportedly came from the same town as Reina and Bertolt. Using this as a jumping off point, Eren and Armin began revealing Reina and Bertolt's other suspicious behavior, such as their actions during the 57th Recon mission and their interactions with Annie during cadet training. With that, Eren, Mikasa, Armin, and Hanji traveled to Utgard Castle, which was their best approximation for where the scouts took refuge. At the castle, Ymir stumbled upon cans of herring marked with a foreign language. When she handed one to Reina, he was shocked to learn that it was not a language those within the walls could read, meaning that, like himself, she was not from Paradis. Before he could probe further, however, Titans began to assault the castle. While the veteran scouts dealt with the ambush, the others barricaded the interior. After dealing with a Titan that attacked Reina, the scouts moved to the roof, where, stranded, Ymir decided that the only course of action was to transform into the Jaw Titan. In doing so, Reina realized that she was the one who killed Marcel. After slaughtering a portion of the Titans, Ymir, overwhelmed, began being torn apart herself. Just then, the other scouts arrived to save them. After Ymir was pulled from her Titan, Krista, fulfilling the promise she had made to Ymir on the mountain years ago, revealed that her real name was Historia. Hours later, as the scouts stood atop Wall Rose, Reina's fractured mind finally began to unravel. The chaos of recent events, the sighting of Zeke, his near-death encounter, and the realization that Ymir had been the one to kill Marcel eroded the fragile divide between the warrior and the soldier. Unable to cope with the mounting pressure within, Reina made a reckless decision, one that he couldn't stop himself from making, despite knowing it would change everything. In this moment of desperation, he revealed to Eren the truth of his and Bertolt's Titan identities, as if exposing the secret might somehow make him whole again. Eren, caught between disbelief and denial, couldn't accept the admission despite the clear evidence, clinging onto the hope that Reina's words were simply delusions. But Reina, committed to his admission, decided it was time to finish their mission once and for all. Mikasa, eavesdropping on their conversation, moved to cut them down before they could act. Faced with the inevitability of a confrontation, Reina and Bertolt had no choice but to reveal their true identities. Finally revealed as the warriors they were, Reina moved to secure Eren, while Bertolt grabbed Ymir. Witnessing the truth with his own eyes, Eren transformed into the Attack Titan, and, utilizing Annie's martial arts techniques, ripped off Reina's arm. Afterwards, he and Reina continued to fight, with Eren eventually pinning him to the ground. Locked in this position, Reina signaled for Bertolt to fall on top of them, allowing the both of them to escape with Eren and Ymir. 5 hours later, Mikasa, who had fallen unconscious during the battle, finally awoke, instantly ready to save Eren. Armin informed her that for the time being, they didn't have the capability to rescue him. Sometime later, scout reinforcements, including Erwin and Hannes, arrived with fresh equipment. Pursuit on the table, Hanji shared her approximation of where Reina took Eren before they moved after him. Hours later, Eren awoke in the forest, finding he and Ymir's limbs were severed to keep them from escaping. As they began to talk, Reina's mind, confused at this point more than ever, once again reverted back to the soldier he was inside the walls. To snap him out of it, Bertolt had to remind him that they were warriors, and that they came here to accomplish a mission. With a clearer mind, Rhina tried to convince Ymir to join their side, hoping it would bring resolution without the need for more conflict. Just then, the scouts began to close in on their location, forcing Rhina and Bertolt to use their ODM gear to escape with Eren and Ymir. While doing so, Ymir threatened to turn into a Titan and take Eren if they didn't grab Historia. With no other options, they allowed Ymir to turn into a Titan and obtain Historia before making a run to the sea. When the scouts caught up to them, they spoke to Bertolt, who told them that their time together wasn't an act, that despite the lies and betrayal, they were still friends. Just then, Erwin drew the attention of a horde of Titans, using them to flank the warriors. Swarmed by Titans, Rhina was forced to expose Bertolt and Eren. In the midst of this chaos, Erwin's arm was bit off by a Titan. Afterward, Armin, knowing Bertolt and Rhina were unaware of Annie's situation, told Bertolt that Annie was being tortured by the military, which caused him to lose focus, presenting an opportunity for Erwin to cut Eren free. While Mikasa and Eren made their escape, Rhina began throwing Titans at them, hoping he might get lucky and one of them would eat Eren. After the attack, when Eren regained clarity, he was once more confronted by the Smiling Titan. Acting with the courage that was devoid during the fall of Wall Maria, Hannes saved Eren just before he was grabbed by Eren's mother's killer. Witnessing the carnage that surrounded him, Eren tried to transform into a Titan. However, due to his emotional distress, he was unable to do so, resulting in Hannes suffering the same fate as his mother. Assuming they were on the verge of death, Mikasa thanked Eren for all that he had done for her. Eren reciprocated these feelings by promising that he would always wrap his scarf around her, symbolizing his willingness to sacrifice his own comfort and even his own life for her. As the Smiling Titan reached for Eren, he let out a scream as his fist came into contact with it. In this moment, Eren had unknowingly discovered a loophole present in the Founding Titan's abilities. While it was true that the power of the Founder could only be wielded by those possessing royal blood, there was a way for those without it to access at least a fraction of her power. This could only be done when an inheritor of the Founding Titan came into contact with someone of royal lineage who was either a pure Titan or wielded one of the 9. Given that the Smiling Titan was Dinah Fritz, Eren had, for a single fleeting moment, accessed a fraction of the Founding Titan's power dormant within him, subconsciously allowing him to command the surrounding pure Titans to attack his mother, as well as Rhina and Bertolt. In the midst of this, Ymir, finally embracing her own truth, decided to save Rhina and Bertolt from the Titan onslaught so they could reclaim the power she took from Marcel. Just under 1 week after Wall Rose was reported as compromised, the central government was faced with the decision to either starve their citizens or trust the Scout Regiment's observations that Wall Rose was undamaged. To avoid the never-before-seen civil unrest that would result from mass starvation, the government concluded that the area within Wall Rose was completely secure. Meanwhile, Hanji and Connie, left with unanswered questions, met with Erwin, Pixis, and Levi to propose a theory that Titans were, in actuality, people, and that the Titans within Wall Rose were, somehow, the citizens of Ragako. Following their failed attempt to capture Eren, Rhina and Bertolt regrouped with Zeke, revealing that the Founding Titan was in possession of a kid named Eren Yeager. Upon hearing this, it dawned on Zeke that Grisha, his estranged father, had somehow survived his execution and continued his restorationist crusade from within the walls. From this moment, Zeke, while determined to capture the Founder and accomplish his euthanization plan, also resolved to become for Eren what Sava had been for him, a guiding light that would save him from the shadow of their father's influence. To keep a closer eye on Historia and Eren, Erwin, rightfully paranoid, assigned the noteworthy scouts of the 104th training class to the Levi squad. Under their watch, Eren would continue to push the boundaries of his Titan abilities, in hopes that they could use him to seal Wall Maria. During this period, Pastor Nick was murdered by the 1st Interior Squad in his apartment in Trost. When Hanji found out, she was told it was a simple break-in. Seeing through the lie and sensing deep-rooted corruption, she shared the news of his murder with the Levi squad. Shortly afterward, their paranoia was vindicated when the central government froze all scout activity and ordered the surrender of Historia and Eren. When Ervin refused to do so, Rod Rice himself obtained the assistance of Kenny Ackerman's anti-personnel control squad to abduct Aaron and his daughter. When the Levi squad learned of their imminent arrest, they decided to move to Trost. In Trost, Kenny's team ambushed Levi as well as his squad, capturing Historia and Aaron in the process. To learn the truth behind why Aaron and Historia were abducted, Hanji and Levi tortured Sanas, learning that the Rice family were the true royal bloodline, meaning that Historia was the rightful heir to the throne. Meanwhile, the 1st Interior Squad framed the scouts for the murder of Demo Reeves, claiming that they had hired him to abduct Aaron for their own purposes. Unbeknownst to them, Demo's son, Flagle Reeves, witnessed the murder and fled for his own safety. In the wake of Demo's death, the central government issued warrants for the arrest of all scouts. During these events, Ervin confided in Pixis, revealing his past as well as his plans to overthrow the government by installing Historia as the rightful queen. Shortly after, Ervin was arrested by the military police. While hiding in the woods, Levi's squad captured Marlowe and Hitch, who ultimately joined their cause upon learning the truth about the events in Stohez. Meanwhile, Hanji rescued Flagle Reeves from the interior police, and with his assistance, orchestrated a plan that exposed the government's corruption to the public. During this same time, Levi interrogated one of Kenny's men, learning that Ackerman was Kenny's surname. Following his arrest, Ervin was taken to the capital to face trial, where Auril, speaking on behalf of the false King Fritz, declared him guilty of violating Cause 6 of the Charter of Humanity, prioritizing one's gain over the safety and longevity of humanity. The sentencing was interrupted when they were given a false report that Wall Rose had fallen to the colossal and armored Titans. Pixis immediately ordered the garrison to evacuate refugees into Wall Sina, but Auril opposed the move, insisting the gates remain closed to avoid the inevitable famine and rebellion. At that moment, Premier Zachary entered the room, revealing the report to be a fabrication. Pixis then declared the monarchy guilty of the exact same crime they had accused Ervin of. With that, the military finally had motive to finalize their coup d'etat. After the coup, Premier Zachary was positioned as interim monarch, while the scouts focused on locating Historia. As part of this effort, all charges against the scouts were dropped. Meanwhile, Aaron awoke beneath the chapel where he encountered Historia and her father. When Rod prompted Historia to touch Aaron, she unlocked a fraction of Grisha's memories within Aaron. As this transpired, Kenny's anti-personnel squad prepared an ambush for the scouts. Upon their arrival, the scouts launched their infiltration, using barrels of gunpowder and oil to shroud their movements. While the scouts battled Kenny's squad, Rod explained the founding Titan succession ritual to Historia and presented her with the Titan serum. Overhearing Rod's explanation, Kenny, acting on his own motives, freed Aaron to give him a chance to fight for his power. Aaron, however, refused to resist, declaring to Historia that if inheriting the founding Titan would truly bring an end to the Titans and grant freedom to his friends, then he would gladly give up his life. This declaration made Historia question why the royal family had not liberated humanity before if they had the power to do so. Rod then revealed that the First King's will forced those with royal blood to adopt his pacifist ideology, perpetuating the Titan's existence. Hearing this, Historia rejected her father's offer, destroyed the Titan serum, knocked her father down, and freed Aaron. In desperation, Rod consumed the spilled serum, transforming into a massive abnormal Titan. As the cavern collapsed, the scouts seized their chance to rescue Aaron. Freed from his chains, Aaron drank a blood vial labeled armor, unlocking the ability to harden his skin and create crude hardened constructs. Using this newfound power, he shielded his friends from the collapsing cavern, while Rod Rice's Titan mindlessly advanced toward the Orvid district. By morning, the garrison launched a massive barrage of cannon fire to halt the Titan's progress. However, when Rod's Titan reached Wall Rose, Aaron hurled an explosive payload into its throat. Once detonated, the massive Titan erupted, scattering chunks of its head into the sky. Among the falling flesh was the fully intact nape, which Historia struck down in full view of the citizens. After the battle, Levi discovered a fatally wounded Kenny among the rubble of the chapel. Eyeing the Titan serum, Kenny revealed his desire to experience the power of a Titan after witnessing it among the Rice family for so long. However, instead of using it for himself, Kenny entrusted the serum to Levi, revealing in his final moments that he was Levi's uncle, thereby confirming their shared lineage as Ackermans. Following the events in Orvid, Historia, beloved for her actions, was crowned as the true queen, inspiring newfound hope within the walls. Meanwhile, in Shiganshina, Zeke and Rhina battled to decide their next move. Zeke emerged victorious, prioritizing the ambush of the scouts over rescuing Annie. Over the next 2 months, Historia used her newfound status to uplift and support those in need. First and foremost were the orphans, who she provided with boarding and meals regardless of the cost. To this end, she collaborated with Levi to uplift those living in the underground, who she knew had it worse than anyone else. Meanwhile, the scouts helped Eren master his Titan endurance and hardening abilities until he was skilled enough to plug Walmaria without breaking a sweat. In doing so, the scouts developed a new trap for the Titans that Hanji dubbed the Executioner from Hell. This trap allowed them to passively kill Titans by luring them to the wall and smashing their nape with a log. In addition to this invention, the Corps of Engineers took inspiration from hidden interior technology to develop the Thunder Spears, giving the scouts the edge they needed to effectively battle Rhina. With these advancements, preparations to retake Walmaria were finally complete. To mark the occasion, the scouts were treated to a celebratory feast. The following day, just moments before their departure, the citizens of Trost gathered to give them a rousing send-off, the likes of which the scouts had never received. Over the cover of night, the scouts made their exodus to Shiganshina, strategically timing their expedition to align with the new moon. Peak, in Cart Titan form, kept watch during their travels, and when they neared their destination, reported their arrival to the other warriors. At dawn, when the scouts were just minutes from Shiganshina, they switched to ODM gear, using it to immediately travel to the outer gate of Shiganshina, where Eren didn't hesitate to plug Walmaria. Thanks to his extensive training over the past 2 months, this didn't even faze him, and they moved to plug the inner wall as well. Meanwhile, Armin discovered the remnants of the warriors' camp. He immediately reported this to Erwin, who, trusting in Armin's judgment, gave him temporary command over the scouts. Soon enough, Armin deduced that Rhina and Bertolt were unaware that they knew the walls were not solid. Using this knowledge, Armin gambled that they might be hiding within the walls themselves, waiting for Eren to seal the inner gate and block their exit. Armin's gambit quickly paid off when a scout uncovered Rhina's hiding spot. When Rhina emerged from the wall, Levi plunged his blade into Rhina's neck, which would have killed him if not for Rhina's ability to temporarily transfer his consciousness to the rest of his body, giving him just enough time to summon the armor. Soon after, Zeke shifted into the Beast Titan and let out a scream, transforming the dozens of subjects of Ymir he had hidden underground into Titans. To keep the scouts from escaping, Zeke threw a boulder at the inner gate, blocking the scouts from reaching their horses. Faced with danger from both sides, the scouts awaited Erwin's command. Erwin, deducing Zeke's strategy, ordered half the scouts to protect the horses, while the rest were to take down Rhina. The only one who was singled out was Levi, who Erwin tasked with killing the Beast Titan. To distract Rhina from killing the horses, Eren transformed right in front of him. The plan worked, and Rhina went after Eren. While they fought, the rest of the Levi and Hanji squad used Thunder Spears to first stun, then incapacitate Rhina. Just before he was incapacitated, Rhina transferred his consciousness once more to his nervous system before screaming, signaling for Zeke to throw Bertolt. In the air, Bertolt spotted Rhina's limp body. Knowing that if he transformed then it would kill Rhina, he first used his ODM gear to check on his friend. Armin took this as an opportunity to confront Bertolt, learning that, unlike before, he was determined to finish their goal of abducting Eren and killing those within the walls. To this end, he ascended into the sky and unleashed the power of the Colossal.
We're quiet as we wait for the tidings, bracing for the cold, chilling winds hiding. My heart's racing, blazing with sheer passion, ready for the shadow. You tell me that there's no hope in trying, but the worst is here, no point in hiding. No, we can't win.
Assuming themselves the lone survivors of the explosion, the Levi squad planned to end Bertolt once and for all. Meanwhile, within Walmaria, Levi watched helplessly as the Beast Titan launched a devastating volley of debris at the scouts. Pinned down by the bombardment, Erwin declared that their only chance of survival was a desperate charge into certain death. A final act of bravery to distract the Beast Titan long enough for Levi to flank and kill him. Leading the charge himself, Erwin was struck down by a piece of debris. Yet the distraction worked. Levi executed his part flawlessly, ripping Zeke from his Titan. With his blade to Zeke's throat, Levi planned to save Erwin by injecting him with Titan serum and letting him eat Zeke. But before he could act, Peak intervened, whisking Zeke to safety. Determined to fulfill Erwin's orders, Levi bolted after the cart Titan. On the battlefield, Flock, the lone standing scout, began his search for survivors, eventually discovering Erwin on the brink of death. Inside Shiganshina, Armin noticed the colossal titan growing thinner as it emitted steam. Utilizing this observation, he devised a plan that involved him and Eren taking down the colossal, while the others kept Reina busy. After Armin informed Eren of his plan, Eren feigned weakness to draw Bertolt's attention to Armin. Armin then faced Bertolt, tricking him into releasing as much steam as possible, which allowed Eren to rip Bertolt from his titan. Meanwhile, Mikasa, Jean, Sasha, Connie, and eventually Hanji, who was the only survivor of her squad, took down Reina. When he was incapacitated, they planned to take his power using Levi's syringe. However, shortly after Mikasa left to get the syringe, Zeke, atop the cart Titan, swooped in to rescue Reina. Immediately after, Zeke went to secure Bertolt, however he decided against doing so after seeing Levi. Before retreating, Zeke, wanting to save Eren from what he had assumed was Grisha's restorationist brainwashing, cryptically told Eren that he would save him from all of this. When Levi reached Eren, he quickly demanded his ODM gear so he could pursue Zeke. Just then, Armin let out a faint gasp. Seeing a clear opportunity to both save Armin and secure the power of the Colossal, Eren pressured Levi to inject Armin with the syringe. However, just as Levi was about to do so, Flock arrived with Erwin's wounded body. The scouts were then faced with a single, uncompromising decision. One that had them choose whether or not they would stick with what they were comfortable with what they had been, or trust in the future of the scouts, in what they all knew they could be. Give the shot to Erwin, the greatest scout commander of all time, or Armin, who Erwin himself saw as the embodiment of the best of the scouts' ideals. After several critical, heartbreaking minutes, the decision was finally made, not by Eren or Levi, but by Erwin himself, who rejected the syringe. In doing so, he rejected the opportunity to fulfill his lifelong dream of learning the truth about humanity. Trusting in Erwin's judgment, Levi injected Armin with the syringe. Armin, as a pure Titan, then ate Bertolt, inheriting the incredible power of the Colossal Titan. Hours later, Eren, Mikasa, Hanji, and Levi proceeded to Eren's childhood home. In the cellar, they uncovered hidden books in Grisha's desk. These books revealed a shocking truth. Humanity was alive beyond the walls. Yet, they viewed the Eldians of Paradis as not just a threat, but a stain to be cleansed from the world. At last, Eren understood the identity of their true enemy. Not the Titans, nor the warriors. Their true enemy was the entire world. Upon returning to Trost, Eren and Mikasa were imprisoned for their insubordination. Days later, the two of them were summoned to the capital to present Grisha's revelations to the monarchy. During the deliberation, Eren finally realized the truth behind the identity of the Smiling Titan, that it was his half-mother, Dinah Fritz, and that her royal blood must have had something to do with why he was able to control the Titans for a split second just a few months prior. Keeping this revelation to himself, Eren sat quietly while Historia declared that no matter how world-shattering it may be, she had a duty to share the truth to her people. Following a memorial for their fallen soldiers, the scouts were given medals for not only retaking Walmaria, but lifting Paradis out of ignorance. During the ceremony, when Historia touched Eren, his father's memories of his own future were revealed to him. In these memories of the future, he saw his inescapable march toward a freedom that he had no choice but to pursue. From that moment onward, Eren knew that he was to become the very thing he had feared. Not a murderer or a warmonger, but a slave to his own destiny. Following their failure on Paradis, the warriors returned to Marley, where Ymir's Jaw Titan was passed to Porco Galliard, Marcel's younger brother. In the wake of this, Marley's loss of both the female and colossal titans became public knowledge. Observing this lapse in dominance, the Mid-East Allied forces, a coalition of rival nations, declared war on Marley. Faced with the looming threat of yet another prolonged war, Marley put the Paradis Island operation on indefinite hold. Before he was sent to fight in Marley's new war, Zeke secretly met with Kiyomi Azumabito, a representative of the Azumabito clan from Hizuru. In this meeting, Zeke presented her with his plan to help Paradis restore Eldia to its former glory. According to his plan, Paradis would unleash a fraction of the Wall Titans to devastate the world's major powers, buying them the time necessary to modernize their military and establish alliances with smaller nations. He proposed that Hizuru aid Paradis in this development in exchange for access to Iceburst Stone, an exceedingly rare resource that fueled the scouts' ODM gear. By winter of 850, nearly every Titan within Wall Maria had been eradicated using Hanji's Executioner from Hell. By spring of 851, roughly a year after the Battle of Trost, the military formally announced that the citizens of Paradis could safely return to Wall Maria. For the first time in 6 long years, the scouts could finally resume their mission of exploring the world beyond the walls, finally free from the threat of the Titans. After days or possibly even weeks of travel, the scouts eventually made it to the sea. But where everyone else saw a vast expanse of water, Eren saw a path toward freedom, a way to liberate his friends from the enemy that lay beyond the sea. Soon after, Marley sent a survey fleet to assess the situation on Paradis. The scouts intercepted the fleet, capturing a soldier and chef named Niccolo, alongside crates of Marleyan wine that, unknown to them, were infused with Zeke's spinal fluid. When the second ship arrived, it too was intercepted. However, this time, 2 soldiers aboard, named Yelena and Onyan Capone, staged a mutiny under the direct orders of Zeke Yeager. Following this confrontation, the 2 soldiers met with Scout Commander Hanji as well as Levi. In this meeting, Yelena revealed detailed knowledge of Marley's military capabilities, weaponry, and ongoing war with the Mid-East Allied forces. The meeting concluded with Yelena finally revealing her allegiance with Zeke and delivering a letter that proposed a plan to resolve the conflict between Paradis and Marley. However, for this plan to work, it required both the founding Titan and a Titan of royal blood. As their relationship with the Marleyan refugees strengthened, the scouts, and subsequently Paradis, began to learn more about the culture, politics, religion, and technology of the greater world. In learning this, their ignorance transformed into hope that one day they might stand side by side with the rest of the world. To do so, they launched a full-scale modernization effort. In accordance with this plan, the people of Paradis rebranded themselves as the Nation of Eldia. The next year, Eldia welcomed its first official visitors from Hizuru, led by Kiyomi Azumabito. Upon her arrival, Kiyomi sought out any remaining direct descendants of the Azumabito clan, quickly identifying Mikasa as the last of their lineage. Afterwards, Kiyomi met with the monarchy to discuss Zeke's proposal to start a small-scale rumbling. This drastic measure, she argued, would buy Paradis the time needed to modernize its military and stabilize its position in the global arena. In exchange, Hizuru would gain access to Paradis' natural resources, especially the highly sought-after Iceburst Stone. After Eldia agreed to her proposal, Kiyomi returned to Hizuru to secure their cooperation. However, Hizuru, realizing its monopoly over Paradis' valuable resources, chose to exploit this advantage rather than assist in fostering international relationships or modernizing Paradis' infrastructure. When Hanji received word of Hizaru's refusal, she concluded that if the world would not help Eldia reshape their image, they would have to do it themselves. The following year, Yelena secretly met with Eren to discuss Zeke's euthanization plan, urging him to take decisive action to pressure the military into compliance. Floch overheard this conversation and was later confronted by Eren, who assured him that while he claimed to agree with Zeke, he had his own vision to save Eldia. When he was to eventually come into contact with his brother, he would enact the full power of the rumbling, leaving the Eldians of Paradis as the world's last remaining inhabitants. Later that year, the veteran scouts ventured into Marley to find ways to foster alliances and reshape the world's perception of the Eldians of Paradis. Soon after their arrival, they met with Kiyomi, who warned them that their search for allies would likely be far more difficult than they first assumed. Meanwhile, Eren saved a boy named Ramsey from being beaten by a group of Marleyans. While simple, this act of kindness conflicted deeply with the inevitability of his future actions. Why save a child from harm, or do any good deed for that matter, when he knew that in less than a year, they were all destined to perish at his hand? Unaware of the internal conflict ailing Eren, Ramsey led Eren to a cliff overlooking his home. When Mikasa eventually found him, he asked her a simple yet profound question: "What am I to you?" Fearing rejection, or possibly unaware of her own feelings, her guarded reply was that they were family. Immediately following this, the scouts were invited by the refugees to join them in a night of celebration. Unknown to the scouts, this would be their last fleeting moment of joy before their world was thrust into war. The next day, the scouts attended a public forum where they learned that while the global perception of Eldians was improving, this progress stemmed from the world's shared hatred of the Eldians of Paradis. This revelation cemented Eren's belief that peaceful resolution was not just unlikely, it was impossible, made clear to the scouts as they watched Eren leave the meeting. Unknown to them, this would be the last they saw of Eren for months, as directly after this moment, he would ally with Zeke, who formulated a plan for Eren to infiltrate Marley. By doing so, he would be holding himself hostage in enemy territory to force Eldia to invade Marley. In 854, the war between Marley and the Mideast Allied forces came to a head at Fort Slava. Marley's objective was to neutralize the Allied fleet stationed in the harbor near the fort. Lacking naval superiority, their strategy hinged on capturing the fort itself and using its own artillery to obliterate the fleet. The assault was led by 800 Eldian soldiers, along with the last remaining Titans in Marley's possession, those being the Jaw, Cart, Armored, and Beast Titans. Last but not least were the next generation of warrior candidates, Gabi Brown, Falco Grice, Udo, and Zofia, all of which fought diligently to secure their place as next in line to inherit Rhina's armor. As the Battle of Fort Slava raged, the Marleyan military became overwhelmed by the Allied forces' advanced weaponry, the crown jewel of which were their armored trains equipped with state-of-the-art anti-Titan artillery. To overcome this obstacle without risking one of the 9 Titans or more Eldian infantry, Gabi disguised herself as a civilian before using a bundle of grenades to derail one of the armored trains, creating an opportunity for Rhina and Zeke to launch a coordinated attack. In the midst of this chaos, Eren infiltrated the Marleyan army, going so far as to sever his own leg and stab his eye in order to mask his identity. Meanwhile, above the battlefield, Zeke transformed dozens of spinal fluid-infused Eldians into Titans. Dropped from an airship, the Titans rained chaos upon the Allied forces. When Rhina joined the assault, he single-handedly dismantled much of the fort's artillery, sustaining significant injuries in the process. When the fort was clear, Zeke launched a volley of artillery at the Allied fleet, ensuring Marley's ultimate victory. After the battle, the Mideast Allied forces were forced to surrender, finally ending the war on Marley's terms. While this victory may have reminded the world of Marley's current dominance, Commander Theo Magath warned the Marleyan military's leadership that their state of superiority was no doubt fleeting. While Marley had relied on the Titans to maintain supremacy, their adversaries, forced to innovate in other ways, had quickly advanced technologically. And with the world on the cusp of aerial warfare, Marley's capabilities were soon to be eclipsed entirely. In response to this, Zeke proposed they resurrect the Paradis Island operation. By committing all available resources, Marley could reclaim not only the island's resources and the founding Titan, but potentially all 9 Titans, cementing their dominance and avenging prior failures. Later that night, Eldian soldiers returning from the war celebrated their victory aboard a train bound for Liberio. Amidst the revelry, Falco sought confidence in Rhaina about his fears for Gabi, that her ambition would earn her the Armored Titan, condemning the girl he liked to a life of warfare and an early grave. Taking the advice of Rhaina, Falco vowed to train harder than ever before and claim the Armored Titan for himself to save Gabi. Sometime after arriving in Liberio, Zeke gathered with the other warriors as well as Colt Grice, his successor and Falco's older brother. During the meeting, Zeke shared his strategy for convincing Marley to prioritize the Paradis Island operation. His plan focused on enlisting the prestigious Tiber family, who in the past century had fostered relationships the world over. By leveraging this status, Zeke hoped that the operation would not only gain Marley's full support, but also the backing of other nations, setting the stage for a global conflict against Paradis. Sometime afterward, Zeke met with Eren in secret, making sure that they were still on the same page about enacting his euthanization plan. Eren, playing into Zeke's nihilistic outlook, stated that the world would be better off if he had not been born, and that he would gladly go along with Zeke's plan. Zeke, who had been looking forward to this moment since he first learned of Eren's existence, shared how proud he was of Eren. However, internally, he still reserved his full trust until the time was right. While roaming around Liberio, Falco stumbled upon Kruger, the identity Eren had adopted after defecting to Marley. Following a quick conversation about the effects of war, Eren asked Falco to do him a simple favor. Seeing as all the letters from inside the internment zone were checked by security, he asked if Falco would use his warrior candidate status to deliver his letter from outside the internment zone. Falco eagerly accepted the request, running as fast as he could to help someone he barely even knew. Unknown to Falco, this letter was addressed to the scouts, telling them when and where to strike if they wanted to rescue both him and Zeke. When the Tiber family eventually arrived at Liberio, they immediately began planning the festivities. Willie Tiber, the current face of the Tiber family, headed these festivities, the goal being to share the truth about the Great Titan War to every major nation. In doing so, he would bestow upon the world a new hero, as well as a common enemy. The following day, while the warriors helped plan the initial stages of the renewed Paradis Island operation, Willie Tiber pulled a few strings in order to gather nearly every world leader for the festival in Liberio. The day after, Magath met with Willie to discuss the possibility of an attack by Paradis during his speech. Despite the danger, Willie decided that he would gladly lay down his own life if it meant that the world might rally around his cause. Later that day, just a few minutes before Willie Tiber took stage, Falco would be coerced by Eren to invite Rhaina to meet with him in a cellar under the stage. When the theatrics began, Willie revealed a shocking truth to the world, that Hellos was a false savior, and Karl Fritz was the true hero behind the Great Titan War. As he shared this information, Yelena, posing as a Marleyan officer, led Porco and Peak into a trap. When Willie's theatrics ended, he invited the world to join together to stop their true enemy. Not the Eldians, nor the people of Paradis, but a true devil named Eren Yeager. With Eren revealed, the scouts began their infiltration, with most of the veteran scouts using the improved anti-personnel ODM gear to take out as many Marleyan forces as they could. In the ensuing chaos, Zofia was crushed by a boulder. Udo, in a failed attempt to rescue her, was trampled to death by the crowd of escaping civilians. As Colt and Gabi took Udo's body to a hospital, Porco and Peak were rescued by Peak's Panzer unit. Simultaneously, Willie's sister, Lara Tiber, transformed into the Warhammer to avenge her brother. When Eren was subdued, Mikasa arrived just in time to save him. As she did so, Eren spotted the location where Laura was controlling her Titan from. Using Mikasa as a distraction, Eren grabbed the crystal that encased Lara's body. Just then, Porco latched onto Eren's neck. Acting fast, Levi sliced his jaw muscles, leaving Porco unable to bite down further. As the warrior unit regrouped to assess the situation, Zeke shifted into the Beast Titan, putting up just enough of a fight to make it look like he was being captured against his will. Around the same time, with Marley reinforcements soon to arrive, Armin used the power of the Colossal Titan to decimate the port. Left as Marley's best hope, Peak attempted to take out as many scouts as she could, while Porco fought Eren. The scouts quickly bested Peak, forcing her to withdraw. In Porco and Eren's fight, Eren discovered that the true power of the jaw was that it was the direct counter to Titan hardening. Using this to his advantage, he ripped off Porco's limbs, using his jaws to crush Lara's crystal, usurping the power of yet another Titan. With the Beast, Cart, Jaw, and Warhammer all out of commission, Gabi and Falco screamed for Rhina's help. Rhina, lethargic from the years of war, wanted nothing more than to ignore their screams, to die in peace after suffering so much loss. Yet, he could not forgive himself if his inaction led to their deaths. With that, he decided he would continue to fight, knowing that he would either be victorious or finally die. Either way, he would get what he wanted. Despite his lack of energy, Rhina managed to save Porco from being eaten by Eren. Knowing they had secured victory, Eren and Mikasa regrouped with the rest of the scouts aboard the airship. As the scouts made their exit, Gabi shot and killed former garrison commander Lobov. Using his ODM gear, with Falco choosing to follow, they boarded the airship, where Gabi put a single bullet in Sasha's chest. Upon their return to Paradis, Eren, Gabi, and Falco were imprisoned, while Zeke was put under the surveillance of Levi, who took him out into the forest to keep him isolated from Eren. Taking extra precaution, Levi brought with him a group of scouts who insisted they brought along a crate of rare Marley and wine. Meanwhile, on the other side of the sea, the rest of the world's nations joined forces to put an end to the threat of Paradis once and for all. The first step in this plan was sending Peak and Porco to infiltrate the Eldian military. About a month later, Gabi and Falco escaped their imprisonment, where they were found by Kaya, the girl Sasha had saved 5 years prior. Despite knowing they were from Marley, Kaya took them to the Browse estate, where they were given food and shelter. By this point, Flock had recruited 3 other scouts to his and Eren's crusade. These scouts were Holga, Vim, and Luis, the girl Mikasa had saved back during the Battle of Trost. Guided by Eren's extremist ideology, these 4 would become the first ever Jaegerists, a group that would be defined by their brazen imperialist values. While collecting intelligence, the group learned that the military police were planning to strip Eren of the founding Titan. Fully aware that the public viewed Eren as a war hero, they leaked his imprisonment to the public. This information drove a wedge within both the public and the military, splitting the island into 2 distinct factions, those who were loyal to the government and those who were loyal to Eren. Soon after, Flock, Holga, Vim, and Luis were arrested for leaking confidential information. Following the leak, the government began investigating Eren's actions prior to his trip to Marley. In retaliation, the Jaegerists, who at this point were a noticeable minority within the military, assassinated Premier Zachary. Using the ensuing chaos as a smokescreen, the Jaegerists broke Eren out of prison, allowing them to continue toward their ultimate goal of reuniting Eren and Zeke. In the wake of this, Pixis, fully aware that the Jaegerists had infiltrated their ranks, opted to surrender in order to learn the goals of the Jaegerists and negotiate for peace without bloodshed. The following day, the Browse family was invited to Niccolo's restaurant in honor of Sasha. During this dinner, Gabi and Falco met with Niccolo, revealing that they were warrior candidates who had gotten there by sneaking aboard an airship. Niccolo instantly deduced that this meant Gabi shot Sasha, who he had come to love despite her Eldian heritage. In a fit of rage, he attempted to strike Gabi with a bottle of wine. Acting fast, Falco pushed Gabi out of the way, absorbing the strike himself. While unconscious on the ground, Falco ingested a bit of the wine before Niccolo dragged the both of them out in front of the Brous family, revealing to everyone that they were the ones who killed Sasha. The scouts who had recently arrived overheard this and attempted to de-escalate the situation. Mr. Brous, Sasha's father, successfully did so by relieving Niccolo of his knife, stating that the adults needed to shoulder the burden of forgiveness to finally stop the cycle of vengeance that had ravaged their children. Witnessing this act of grace, Gabi finally realized that there were never any devils on the island, that Eldian or not, they were all just people. With the situation de-escalated, Armin and Mikasa took Gabi to another room. Meanwhile, Niccolo revealed to Hanji that the wine Falco consumed likely contained Zeke's spinal fluid, and that he had been ordered by Yelena to serve it to as many high-ranking Eldian officers as he could. Just then, Jaegerists entered the restaurant, taking the scouts as prisoners, while Eren ambushed Armin and Mikasa. In this confrontation, Eren told them that everything he was doing was of his own accord, that he wasn't being tricked or blackmailed into helping Zeke. Additionally, he sowed seeds of doubt in their minds, telling Armin that his love for Annie was because of Bertolt's memories, and that Mikasa's proclivity to protect Eren was the result of her Ackerman DNA, both of which were blatant lies. This was a strategic choice made by Eren, a carefully procured selection of lies that were targeted toward their deepest vulnerabilities. But his goal was not to break them as people. No, he wanted to break their friendship, destroy their seemingly unbreakable bond, so when the time came, they would be able to do what was necessary to put an end to his terror. But as the meeting went on, Eren knew that words alone weren't enough. He would have to take action to show them how truly far gone he had become. When he was done demonstrating his heartlessness, he took them as hostages to Shiganshina, where him and Zeke were planning to meet. When Levi was told about the Jaegerist coup within the military, he planned to put an end to Eren's schemes by transferring the Beast Titan to someone else. However, before he could do so, Zeke let out a scream, turning everyone in Levi's detail who had consumed the wine into Titans. Left with no other options, Levi killed every last one of his comrades turned Titans before going after Zeke. Simultaneously, Flock and the Jaegerists interrupted Shadis' cadet training to recruit additional forces, all of which were taken to Shiganshina alongside the rest of the Eldian military. Hours later, to keep Zeke from escaping, Levi impaled him with a Thunder Spear, attaching its pin to Zeke's neck to restrict his movement. Willing to risk anything to meet up with Eren, Zeke purposefully detonated the Thunder Spear, blowing himself in two and fatally wounding Levi. En route to Shiganshina, Flock, Hanji, and the others in their group witnessed the explosion. When they arrived at its source, they found Levi on the brink of death. Just as Flock was about to finish him off, a nearby Titan that Zeke had used to shield himself began releasing steam. Using this as a distraction, Hanji grabbed Levi's body and jumped into the river. Focusing on their primary mission, Flock and the others escorted Zeke to Shiganshina, while Hanji took Levi to a secluded spot in the woods where she tended to his wounds. In Shiganshina, Yelena met with Armin, Mikasa, Connie, and Jean to explain Zeke's euthanization plan. Meanwhile, Eren met with Gabi, ordering her to use a radio to contact any possible Marleyan spies within the walls. Just then, Pieck held Eren at gunpoint, attempting to take him hostage. Eren quickly called her bluff, stating that she had no power over him because she was likely given direct orders not to kill him. Pieck then lied, telling Eren that she would reveal the true enemy to him if he could guarantee freedom for Eldians. On the roof, she fulfilled her promise by showing Eren who the true enemy was. This signaled to Porco to break the floor beneath Eren's feet in an attempt to consume him. He failed to do so, however, giving Eren an opportunity to transform. With the founder flushed out into the open, Marley began their assault on Paradis. Witnessing the raid, Yelena told Eren to exit his Titan form and find safety. However, Eren, witnessing Rhina's descent upon his old home, couldn't resist the confrontation. As Eren battled Reina, Onyan Capone released Armin, Mikasa, Connie, and Jean from imprisonment, where they decided to protect Eren, trusting that he was using Zeke to start a small-scale rumbling. To help them accomplish this, they gathered both Eldian soldiers and Jaegerist forces, both of which could at least agree that protecting Eren was their best option. Outside, Eren was overwhelmed by the Marleyan assault until Zeke made his grand appearance. However, after destroying the Marleyan airships, Zeke was shot down from atop the wall. Eren, still overwhelmed by the other Titans, attempted to push towards Zeke. Meanwhile, Falco was returned to Colt and Gabi, who planned to try to convince Zeke not to use his scream. When Zeke regained clarity, he prepared to follow through with the mass transformation. Just before he did so, Colt pleaded for Zeke to wait just long enough for Falco to get out of range. Zeke, faced with risking his life's purpose if he were to fail, apologized to Colt before letting out a blood-curdling scream. Following the mass transformation, Zeke commanded Falco's Pure Titan to attack Reina. Fighting two Titans at once, Reina had to decide whether to kill Falco or let Eren go. However, as Falco began biting Reina's nape, Reina found himself presented with a third option: to let Falco eat him, saving Falco's life and ending his own torment. Just then, Porco emerged from his crippled Titan body, prompting Falco to eat him instead. Flush with anger, Reina punched Eren for letting yet another one of his friends die. Using this against him, Eren hardened his body, freezing Reina in place as he leapt out of his Titan body and made a run for Zeke. As he did so, Gabi grabbed hold of Colt's anti-Titan rifle, aiming directly at Eren's head. The instant Eren made contact with Zeke, Zeke's consciousness ascended to the paths, where he remained for what felt like years before Eren arrived. In this time, he found a way to nullify the vow renouncing war, which gave him full control over the Founding Titan's abilities. Despite this, he would not use this power to enact his euthanization plan. Instead, he wanted to confirm his suspicions about Eren's true intentions, to see if he was truly free from their father's influence. When Eren finally ascended to the paths, he found Zeke chained to the ground. Zeke explained that these chains were a representation of Karl Fritz's vow renouncing war. However, this was simply a lie he used in order to learn what Eren would do when he thought he had control over the Founder. Playing right into Zeke's hand, Eren revealed that he would never go along with the euthanization plan. Heartbroken, Zeke broke free of his bondage, revealing what he had done in the time before Eren arrived. He then stated that it was not Eren's fault, that his mind was hell-bent on seeking war, that it was their father's corruption that had driven him into thinking the way he did. But, like Sava did to him, he would show Eren the truth. Using the power of the Founder, Zeke guided Eren through the memories of their father. While Zeke's intention was to prove to Eren that his interpretations of Grisha's actions were correct, he was instead faced with the reality that his father was simply a man, one who made more mistakes than he could count. As they roamed through years of Grisha's memories, Zeke learned that his father didn't indoctrinate Eren like he had done to him. that he had learned from his mistakes, and though Eren was to eventually inherit the Attack and Founding Titans, Grisha allowed him to remain an innocent child for as long as he could. When Grisha's memories eventually led them to that fateful day, Eren, a witness to his own future, knew what he was destined to do. As he saw Grisha get crushed under the weight of destiny, Eren knelt down beside his broken father, reminding him of all the things that led him to this very moment, the terror and violence that shaped him into the avatar of Eldia's vengeance, that within him lied the motive, and all he had to do was simply act upon it. When the deed was done, Zeke was faced with his father, who instantly apologized for turning him into a soldier of Eldia instead of seeing him as his son. He then pleaded to Zeke that stopping Eren was imperative, for if he did not, Eren would end the world. When they returned to the paths, Zeke realized the weight of what Grisha told him, that Eren had used him to manipulate the past itself to accomplish his goal. To stop him from succeeding, Zeke ordered Ymir to take the ability to reproduce from all of her subjects. Determined to stop his brother, Eren sprinted toward Ymir to convince her that she wasn't a slave or a god, that she was a person who didn't have to obey anyone, including himself. When Zeke caught up to them, Ymir, acting upon her own will, entrusted Eren with her immense power. Without hesitation, Eren's first act was to undo all Titan hardening. In doing so, the Titans within the walls of Paradis were finally free to trample the world. Immediately following the start of the rumbling, Annie was released from her crystalline prison, where she was quickly confronted by Hitch, who assisted her in escaping the interior. Meanwhile, Connie and Jean, who had witnessed Falco eat Porco, captured him to secure the power of the Jaw Titan. As Eren and the Wall Titans began their march towards civilization, he contacted all subjects of Ymir, informing them that the rumbling had begun, and that he intended to continue until the people of Paradis were the last that remained of humanity. With Eren's intentions clear to all, Mikasa, Armin, Jean, and Connie discussed the repercussions of Eren's choice. Armin in particular was adamant that genocide was not the answer to their problems. However, with no clear way to stop Eren, the focus instead shifted to Falco. Connie insisted that they feed him to his mother, while Armin offered to return him to Rhaina to finally end the cycle of revenge. Connie, likely aware that Armin could convince him if given enough time, took Falco hostage and made his way to Ragako. In the midst of the chaos, as the Brown family was fleeing from danger, Kaya was once again face to face with a Titan. Like Sasha had before her, Gabi saved Kaya from the Titan, prompting the both of them to abandon their hatred. Soon after, with the combined efforts of the scouts, Shiganshina was cleared of Titans. No longer in immediate danger, Armin and Mikasa met with Gabi, who Armin hoped would help them form an alliance between them and the warriors. To demonstrate his goodwill, he agreed to help Gabi rescue Falco from Connie. Meanwhile, in Liberio, the subjects of Ymir pleaded to the Marleyan officers to inform the government of the impending rumbling. When the officers refused to listen, Annie's father incited a revolt, allowing them to hijack a train and travel south to escape the rumbling. On Paradis, Flock and a group of Jaegerists gathered the Marleyan volunteers, forcing them to submit to their newly established Eldian Empire or face self-appointed judgment. Jean, though horrified by the actions of Flock, was presented with two options: live a life of ignorance and luxury with the Jaegerists, or fight for what he knew was the right thing to do. During the same period, Hanji and Levi met with Magath and Peak to propose an alliance in order to stop Eren. Soon after, Mikasa joined Hanji's group before meeting with Jean later that night. Despite his desire to live a life of peace, Jean made the difficult decision to join Hanji and the others, sacrificing his comfort for the betterment of humanity. The next day, Connie and Falco arrived in Ragako. Just as Connie was about to trick Falco into being eaten by his mother, Armin and Gabi arrived to rescue him. Connie immediately grabbed hold of Falco, planning to drop him in his mother's mouth. Before he could do so, however, Armin, prepared to sacrifice his own life to do what was right, jumped into the Titan's mouth. Acting fast, Connie grabbed Armin before he was eaten. After making amends with Falco, Connie traveled with the others to Trost, where they met with Annie. Sometime after, Armin, Annie, Connie, Falco, Gabi, Mikasa, Jean, Magath, Hanji, and Levi agreed to work together to stop Eren after rescuing Yelena and Onyan Capone. Later that day, Flock, Jean, and the Jaegerists gathered in Shiganshina to execute the Marleyan volunteers. Jean, following Armin's plan, fired 4 shots into the ground, signaling for Peak to make her move. Using this as a distraction, Armin and the others gathered supplies and made their way out of Trost to regroup with Magath and Rhina. Shadis, witnessing this selfless alliance, decided to follow after the group. Predicting their next move, Flock gathered the Jaegerists to take the port before anyone else could. When the scouts, warriors, and volunteers eventually regrouped, they set up camp for a final night of rest before they left the island. As the sun set, the group aired out their grievances, bringing resolution to their contentious pasts before moving forward as one. The next morning, the group traveled to the port to secure the Azumabito's flying boat, immediately learning that the Jaegerists had taken the port for themselves. Acting fast, Armin devised a plan that involved him and Connie telling Flock that the Marleyans were acting alone in trying to kill Eren, and that they needed to get the Azumabito engineers to fix the flying boat as soon as possible so they could stop them. Upon hearing this, Flock, sensing something was off, decided against helping Armin. Just then, Kiyomi pinned Flock to the ground, opening an opportunity for Mikasa, Rhina, and Annie to spring into action. As the battle raged on, the scouts and Jaegerists each suffered devastating losses, including those of the Jaegerist reinforcements, which Shadis took out single-handedly. Alongside this, Falco, trying to tip the scales in their favor, transformed into the Jaw Titan for the first time. While this did give the scouts the edge they needed, his inexperience with his Titan forced Magath to cut him free to stop him from his rampage. As the scouts neared victory, Flock attempted to sacrifice himself to prevent their escape. While the scouts assumed he had died, he managed to cling onto the flying boat, hoping to stop them at their next destination. When the battle was practically over, the scouts boarded a tugboat, planning to travel to Odiha Marley, where they could service the flying boat with the proper equipment. The only exception was Magath, who, alongside Shadis, decided to stay behind to sink a Marleyan cruiser. Inside the cruiser, Magath and Shadis made amends with their past mistakes, finding solace in the fact that they had molded mere children into heroes that were going to save the world. As Magath readied his rifle to blow the ship, they shared their names with one another before he fired a single shot, engulfing the ship in a massive explosion. On the other side of the sea, the nations of the world assembled an impenetrable fleet of warships off the coast of Karifa Marley, with the singular goal being to stop the rumbling before it could make landfall. Despite the fleet's incredibly destructive capability, the show of force didn't even slow Eren's march, which quickly made a landfall in Marley. As it did so, the millions of Wall Titans began indiscriminately trampling countless men, women, and children, leaving behind a barren world populated only by the evidence of Eren's wrath. As his titans trampled the world, Eren, with unfettered access to Ymir's power, found himself caught in the chaotic web of time, existing in the past, present, and future simultaneously. Though overwhelmed and shrouded in confusion, one thing remained clear: that all of this, the death, the destruction, the pain, was his fault. No matter how much he tried to shift the blame or deceive himself, he couldn't escape the glaring reality that it was his short-sightedness that had set this catastrophic chain of events into motion. Had someone else inherited this power, perhaps the world wouldn't have needed to end for his friends to find peace. This very flaw, his inability to imagine another path forward, was the shackle that bound him to his role. It wasn't destiny that kept him trapped in this loop, it was himself, his limits, and his desire to trample his enemies. Faced with this unbreakable cycle, Eren had no other option than to finish what he had started. Using Ymir's power, Eren set his story in motion by guiding the Smiling Titan to devour his own mother during the fall of Wall Maria. Alongside this act, he used the paths to reach out to his friends, sifting through their memories and offering them a moment of closure. In quiet, heart-wrenching conversations, he gave them the words that they needed to hear, not to redeem himself, but to help them better understand his actions. Yet, once these moments were over, he erased them from their memories, only to be unveiled upon his death when his horrific actions could be seen in their full context. For Mikasa, however, Eren's love demanded something different. For her, he created an alternate path in time, in which she confessed her love for him on that cliffside in Marley. In this world, they spent the remainder of his short life together before he succumbed to the curse of Ymir. It was during this fragile, fleeting dream that they could finally live the lives of peace and solitude that both of them would forever cherish. While he did hide these memories from Mikasa, Eren intended to share them with her not upon his death, but when the time was right, offering her the bittersweet truth of what might have been to push her to fulfill her own destiny. When the scouts arrived in Odiha, they found it had already been evacuated due to the rumbling. For the next few hours, the Azumabito engineers serviced the flying boat. During this period, Annie told Mikasa that while their goal was noble, she was going to stay behind with Gabi, Falco, and the Azumabito. Meanwhile, Yelena informed the other scouts that Eren was likely headed toward Fort Salta, an airfield in the southern mountains of Marley. Afterwards, Flock revealed his position before using the last of his strength to empty his gun's clip. 3 of the bullets went wide, striking the aircraft's fuel tank, which delayed their departure until they could patch it. Escalating tensions further, the rumbling had arrived faster than expected. Despite all he had done, Hanji and Jean remained with Flock before his death, understanding that beneath his facade of arrogance was a man who simply wanted what was best for his people. As the Wall Titans approached the hangar, Hanji volunteered to do what she could to delay the rumbling, allowing the others to escape. Fully aware that this was a suicide mission, she assigned Armin as the 15th commander of the Scout Regiment. Before she left, she and Levi shared a final moment, where Levi, for the first time ever, gave Hanji the Scout salute, prompting her to dedicate her heart. Hanji, inspired by her friends, used every last bit of her strength and willpower to do whatever she could to slow the rumbling. In the end, she died exactly how she wanted to, in a spectacular blaze of glory. As they traveled to Fort Salta, Armin and the others questioned why Eren was even allowing them to act in opposition to him. After all, with the power of the founding Titan, he had complete control over all subjects of Ymir, meaning he could stop them anytime he wanted. As they speculated further, Eren pulled them into the paths to inform them that he would not take away their freedom, but that if they wanted to stop him, they would have to strip him of his freedom by ending his life. Meanwhile, aboard the Azumabito ship, Falco began to manifest dreams related to the Beast Titan, the direct result of his consumption of Zeke's spinal fluid, which had turned him into a Titan in the first place. In the most vivid of these dreams, Falco found himself flying high above the clouds. When he eventually shared this with Gabi and Annie, they reasoned that this was no coincidence at all and likely had to do with his unique Titan abilities. Kiyomi, still ashamed of her selfishness when it came to helping the people of Paradis, decided to put herself and the other Azumabito at risk by allowing Falco to transform into a Titan to help their friends save the world. When the Liberial refugees arrived at Fort Salta, they found the Marleyan army using the last of their airships to fight against the rumbling instead of running away. As the airships approached their target, Eren used the power of the Warhammer to summon a husk of Zeke's Beast Titan. Using this, he destroyed their airships as they rained their explosive payloads atop his massive body. When the last of the airships were gone, the soldiers and civilians within Fort Salta accepted that the end was inevitable. Just then, an aircraft unlike any other they had ever seen descended upon the attack Titan's body. Leaping from it were the warriors of Marley and the soldiers of Paradis, working side by side to put an end to the rumbling. Following their initial assault, Armin, faced with the dire reality of the situation, decided that he would use the Colossal to destroy Eren's body in 1 minute. Before that time came, however, Ymir used the free will instilled into her by Eren to summon hundreds of 9 Titans from various points in time. One of these Titans, resembling an Okapi, took Armin captive to keep him from using his power. Upon losing consciousness, Armin was transported to the Paths. Meanwhile, the others, faced with hundreds of Titan husks, found themselves on the brink of failure. Peak, in an attempt to blow up Eren's nape, was impaled by a Warhammer Titan, while most of the others found themselves suspended under Eren's body. In this position, Jean and Reina made their final amends as Mikasa and Levi tried to protect them. Just then, Falco, Gabi, and Annie arrived to save them atop Falco's flying Titan. As the warriors and scouts continued their fight, Armin and Zeke conversed in the Paths. In their conversation, they exchanged their world views, with Zeke sharing his nihilistic outlook that had defined his actions since he was just a child. Armin, on the other hand, told Zeke that life wasn't as meaningless as he made it out to be, that there wasn't a grand purpose to everything, that life was what you made of it. Whether that be big or small, it was about the things that you cherished that gave it meaning. For Armin, those things were as seemingly mundane as racing Eren and Mikasa to the tree on the hill in Shiganshina. Suddenly, Zeke realized that he too cherished mundane things like playing catch with Sava, but that he had never allowed himself to stay in that moment. He always had to look forward toward a grand purpose, never basking in the joy of the simpler things. As Zeke reached this revelation, both he and Armin were confronted by the souls of Bertolt, Porco, Grisha, Sava, Kruger, and Marcel. Armin and Zeke, two people who were always unlikely to even share the same space, bound together under the greatest unifying force in the world, their humanity. Be it the relationships with the ones they carried closest to their hearts, or their passions and dreams that guided their lives, they found common ground within the shared human experience. Though it's unknown how, this instilled within Bertolt, Porco, Grisha, Sava, Kruger, and Marcel a new sense of agency, allowing them to join the others in their battle against Eren, opening an opportunity for Mikasa to cut Armin free. Meanwhile, Zeke revealed himself to Levi. While staring out at the vast landscape, Zeke took the opportunity to bask in that singular moment, noting how truly beautiful the world was when he stopped to look at it. Seeing his opening, Levi fulfilled his promise to Erwin by once and for all ending Zeke's life. With Eren's connection to Zeke severed, the rumbling was immediately halted. Taking this as his cue, Jean grabbed the detonator hanging around Eren's neck and blew his head off, releasing the anomaly, which sought to reconnect with Eren. As Reina held the anomaly in place, Armin, accepting that his best friend needed to be killed, used the power of the Colossal to destroy Eren. With the battle seemingly won, the warriors reunited with their families at Fort Salta. Just then, Eren made his return. Colossal in size, Eren made his way toward Armin. Meanwhile, the other warriors and scouts decided to finish the job and fight back against Eren. As they did so, the anomaly began to release a gas similar to the one Zeke used in Ragako, which forced Falco, Levi, Mikasa, and Peak, all of whom were unaffected by the gas, to leave their friends and family behind at Fort Salta. As the inevitability of their deaths was cemented, Connie and Jean decided to do what they had always done and trust in their friends to finish the mission. As Armin and Eren's colossal titans clashed, Mikasa saw an opportunity to end everything by killing Eren. However, she couldn't bring herself to do it. It's at that moment that Eren revealed a piece of their alternate life to Mikasa, giving her the motivation to do what was necessary. As she tied Eren's scarf around her neck, she called upon her friends to help her reach Eren. When she did so, she didn't hesitate to slice Eren's head off. severing him from his cycle of torment. In that instant, all of the memories that Eren had hidden from his friends were revealed, instilling within them a sense of closure just as the battle reached its climactic end. In addition to this, the act of Mikasa killing Eren showed Ymir that even though she loved King Fritz, she didn't have to obey him. With that, she had finally found the connection she was looking for since her initial death, the very reason she willed the paths into existence to begin with. Inspired by Mikasa's love, Ymir gave up her quest to service King Fritz, and subsequently, the power of the Titans. With the power of the Titans cleansed from the world, every Titan, including Jean, Connie, Connie's mother, and even the Wall Titans themselves, were transformed back into humans. In the wake of this, Mikasa informed Armin that she was going to take Eren's head back to Shiganshina to give him a proper burial, something the Marleyans wouldn't allow her to do. Agreeing with her assessment, he provided the Marleyans with a compelling cover story, stating that he was the one who killed Eren, and that with the power of the Titans gone, they were just as human as Marleyans. At this same time, Mikasa was confronted by the soul of Ymir, who, unbound by the will of King Fritz, made it clear to Mikasa that while she had condemned their world to 2,000 years of war, she had also given them an opportunity to fight back against injustice. Ymir, finding solace in this fact, finally relieved her soul from the world. Just as Eren had planned, his death had successfully positioned the defected scouts as the saviors of humanity, who had turned against their fellow Eldians to save the world. Similar to the Tiber family, this provided them with worldwide prestige, allowing them to garner peace between the remaining nations of the world. While her friends began to fulfill their roles as peacekeepers, Mikasa returned to Paradis, where she buried Eren at the base of the tree in Shiganshina. 3 years later, the world had just begun to heal from the wounds the rumbling had inflicted upon it. With around 80% of the world's former population gone, about half of those remaining were left as refugees, their homes destroyed and families torn apart. Meanwhile, the new Eldian Empire, who at this point were under undisputed Jaegerist rule, began building a robust military before the world could retaliate against them. Tensions rising, Armin and the others found themselves returning to their old home, not out of nostalgia, but to fulfill their roles as ambassadors of peace on behalf of the Allied forces, the coalition of nations that survived the rumbling. Welcoming them with open arms was Queen Historia, who feared that her nation could not be redeemed, that the only hope they had left was to put down their weapons and put an end to the cycle of war. Over the next few decades, Mikasa would create a life independent of Eren. With time, she eventually got married, had children, and after a long life, joined Eren in death. As time pressed onward, the world continued its relentless cycle of growth and decay, Shiganshina flourishing in peace and withering in war. Yet through it all, the tree remained, a living witness to the absolutes of existence, the peril that anchored people to conflict, and the unyielding persistence that inspired them to reach for peace. This eternal push and pull, the destruction that forged renewal, the suffering that spurred progress, mirrored the essence of evolution itself. Like evolution, humanity's journey was without end, a cyclical path that would repeat for as long as humanity endured. More than just a witness, the tree was a symbol of this evolution, of what survived beyond the transient. Carried within its towering mass remained a lesson that even amidst the chaos and change, some things are destined to endure.
Eren, どうして外に出たいんだ？
知りたいんだ。外の世界がどうなっているのか。何も知らずに一生壁の中で過ごすなんて嫌だ。
炎の水、氷の大地、砂の雪原。きっと外の世界はこの壁の中の何倍も広いんだ。
きっと壁の外には自由が。俺はここに来て毎日をなんでこんなことになったんだろうって。これが
自由の代償だと分かっていたが払わなかった。
それは進み続けた者にしかわからない。
人はいずれ死ぬ。ならば人生には意味がないのか。そもそも生まれてきたことに意味はなかったのか。死んだ仲間もそうなのか。いや違う、あの兵士たちに意味を与えるのは我々だ。それこそ唯一この残酷な世界に抗う術なのだ。
だからこの子はもう偉いんです。この世界に生まれてきてくれたんだから。
First things first, I want to thank you guys for watching the video. Like I said in the beginning, it was a big passion project of mine, but that doesn't mean that I did it alone. So huge thank you to Classy, who edited this entire video and made the thumbnail, my friend Cameron, who got me into Attack on Titan in the first place and helped me proofread my script, and last but not least, Hanya Wuga, who made that incredible edit at the end of the video. Overall, I'm very proud of how this turned out, and if you were impressed as well, it would mean the world to me if you would support the video. If you are interested in doing so, here are the 4 main ways you can do just that. If you want to support the channel as a whole, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the link at the top of the description. As of right now, there are 2 tiers. $5 and $10. The first gives you access to all the basic stuff like priority reply to comments, a special section in the comments themselves, and membership badges, but you also get weekly members only content. That's either a behind the scenes look into the content itself, or it's a little bit more personality centric, kind of just depending on what I'm feeling like doing that week. The second tier gives you access to all of that, including 3-day early access to all of the videos, and as the channel gets bigger, I plan to add more to this tier. If you prefer just donating a flat custom amount, you could also use the super thanks feature in the comments. If you do end up doing that, I would highly recommend you use it to your advantage and either tell me what you want to see next, or just ask a question. Basically, just use it as your opportunity to ask something, and I will try my absolute hardest to respond to every single one. Now, for both of those, I'm trying to give you something in return for your support. And this third one takes that a little bit more literally, I guess you would say. Basically, I've spent the last month working with an artist to set up a merch store. And I know that with that comes the connotation it's just going to be my logo slapped on a t-shirt, but I've actually decided to go the opposite direction. If you go to OverusedBruh.store or check the little Shopify thing below this video, you will find that I have worked with an artist to help design posters inspired by my biggest videos. And yes, that includes this one. So if you are interested in supporting the channel and you also want something physical in return, please consider checking that out. And if you are watching this video at release, it will be a little bit more of a limited supply, but I promise you I'm working with the artist to design more for more of my videos. The fourth and final way you can support this channel is something that everyone can do because it is absolutely free. All you have to do is simply watch my other videos. It's as simple as that, nothing else. Those videos support me, so if you watch those, you are supporting me as well. Already this outro is about twice as long as I wanted it to be, so I want to end by saying thank you to my channel members. So huge thank you to Rob Jet, The Box Ones, DeadXZ, Skylar, Meow Meow, God of Oil, Sunfish, Vladimir Putin, Ian, Hunter, Solar Hypercane, and Ashton McPherson. Thank you guys again so much for supporting the channel, and thank you guys for watching the video. I'll see you again in a few short months.